Good afternoon. Due to COVID-19, Committee of Adjustment public hearings are being conducted virtually through WebEx Webinar, an online digital platform, and live streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. Participants who registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx Webinar, which is moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing can watch on YouTube. Participants who registered in advance will connect to the hearing by phone or with a compatible electronic device and have the option of participating via video or audio only. Participants will be muted automatically upon entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Please mute your devices until you are called upon to speak. Those participating by video will be temporarily upgraded to panelist when their item is heard. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time, and at all other times your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Members of the public and applicants are not allowed to use the share screen function or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. My name is Nancy Oman and I will be chairing this hearing. Panel members participating via WebEx Webinar who can be seen and heard are Aaron Cheng, Carl Nipfel, and Larry Clay. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permission to extend or alter lawful nonconforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request by email. Please include your name, address, and an email address. Committee of Adjustment and Toronto Local Appeal Body will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email only. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, you may be able to appeal the decision to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, known as TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, the provincial government recently amended the Planning Act and generally removed rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. As of November 28, 2022, only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons and public bodies, as those terms are defined in the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. When the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the agent or applicant, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please speak slowly and clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first with a presentation of the application, and then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent has an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Are there any declarations of interest in any of the slots this afternoon? Staff, panel, no? Are there any files to be closed?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and panel members. No files to be closed this afternoon.
I do believe there's a deferral. I can't remember which one it is offhand.
Yes, so it will be heard after our 3:30 time slot. It's item number 34, 74 Niagara Street.
Okay, thanks. We'll just go in order because I do show a lot of speakers listed. Okay, so we are going to start with item number 20, 321 St. George Street. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 3 photographs of trees on the site, covering letter from the agent, as well as presentation materials, and the agent also sent us a chart of neighborhood contact and support. In our supplemental agenda, we have email correspondence from planning. So let me get to and they are asking for a condition. We have forestry asking for condition number 2. We have 8 form letters in support from owners on St. George Street, and 291, 305, 308, 316, 318, 323, 325, and 330, as well as 112 Admiral. We have correspondence in interest from 309 St. George. And I am showing 2 speakers. You have, actually 3, you have both of the oppositions? Okay. All right. Do we have the agent?
Heather Doubledam, you've been unmuted.
Yes, it's Heather Doubledam from Doubledam Architecture and Design.
Hi. I show Heather Breeze as the agent, so it should be changed to you then, or? Yeah? Okay. All right, I showed 2 speakers, so if you could do a presentation, no more than 5 minutes, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We are the architects for this project, representing our client, Green Street Flats, who focus on purpose-built rental units in established neighborhoods, which could be considered as gentle density. So the proposal for this project is to renovate and add to an existing multi-unit dwelling to increase the number of rental units to 8. The footprint of the existing dwelling will be maintained at the front and the sides, with an addition on the rear and a raised roof. So there are no variances on the roof height or height of main wall because we're keeping within the maximum allowed for height. The majority of the existing brick walls of the existing dwelling will be maintained. Therefore, the impact on the street will be minor. And in terms of context, this section of St. George is just south of DuPont. St. George is considered to be a major street on the official plan, and our site is adjacent to an arterial road, so a large portion of the dwellings on this section of St. George are already multi-unit, and just south there are a number of apartment buildings. You can see this on page 2 of the presentation material, which shows an aerial of the area. So there's 8 variances in front of you. However, 1 variance was included on the zoning notice by mistake. So you may have the revised zoning notice that was uploaded to the system. The variance that was removed is number 6 because there are no maximum number of secondary suites. So I thought I would just take a minute to kind of run through what the variances are and why they could be considered minor. There is one kind of duplicated variance in a way. So variance number 1 and number 7 are both related to the entrance to the basement rental unit at the front of the dwelling. The entrance is located below grade with a walkout. So the entry door is actually concealed below grade and by a railing and landscaping, so it's only partially visible from the street. Variance number 2 is due to the total area of the secondary suites. So with only 1 suite being designated as primary, when you add up the rest of the suites, all the secondary suites, the total area of those suites is greater than the primary. So that triggers variance, even though all of the suites are roughly the same size. Variance number 3 is related to the building depth. The proposed dwelling will have a depth of 21.8 meters, which allows for an addition on the rear and access to the upper units from the side of the building rather than through the front. This strategy was reviewed specifically with City Planning Division. It's in keeping with the depth of many other dwellings in the surrounding neighborhood, and you can see this on the context plan that we submitted. Variance number 4 is floor space index, and we're applying for a variance for this because the units are mainly 2 and 3 bedroom units, so we're trying for family size units in this multi-unit dwelling. Number 5 is front yard landscaping, and it really should be mentioned that the front yard landscaping is still in keeping with all the other properties on the street. It's just that there's the walkout from the basement, which is tucked in against the house. So the front of the front yard landscaping looks like the rest of the street. And the last one is variance number 8. It's related to 2 of the units which are below the minimum size of a secondary suite, but they're still in line with the average Toronto 1-bedroom unit. So they're still 1-bedroom units, not studios. As mentioned, our client contacted neighbors within the 60-meter radius and received 9 letters of support. Also spoke to other neighbors who gave verbal support. We are also aware of the planning condition on the file that these units remain as rental for the next 20 years, which our client has no objection to because he's building purpose-built rental units. So lastly, in considering a minor variance application, we always review the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and we feel that in the context of those 4 tests that the proposed variances are minor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have you back after we hear from the opposition, and we'll hold any questions till then also. All right.
Anna Paul, you've been unmuted.
Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Hi. Can you speak up a little bit? Are you speaking in opposition to this application?
Yes, I am.
Alrighty. If you can identify yourself for the record, name and address, and as soon as you've done that, the clock starts and you have 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Anna Paul, and I live at 309 St. George Street, directly south of the proposed development. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our case. I just want to start out by saying that we do not oppose that the property would be developed or renovated. You know, we live downtown and change is inevitable and even welcome. We do, however, strongly oppose the proposed development in its current scope. In the proposed plan, variance 6 requests to have the 7 secondary units, and this, in our opinion, is by no means a minor change. And the plan shows a total of 18 bedrooms put in place if the proposed plan is approved. If there are couples, for example, that would mean there'd potentially be up to 36 people living next door at any given time. This would undoubtedly have noise, privacy, and potential security risks associated. We respectfully request a reduction in the amount of secondary units, allowing room for moderate development and intensification while maintaining character of the neighborhood and livability. Additionally, variance 8 specifies that some of the units are smaller than the 55 square meters required, and if the total number of units was reduced, fewer units would allow for more appropriately sized units. We also respectfully request that you deny the 3rd variance to extend the dwelling almost 5 meters past the maximum allowable length of 17 meters. By adding the full requested additional depth for all 3 stories, the square footage of the house would approximately double in size from its current state. This is not reflective of reasonable growth or minor changes or development in a neighborhood with nothing of the sort in the immediate surroundings. If approved, reverting to fewer units at the maximum allowable depth of the 17 meters and the floor space index of 1 should be more than sufficient to plan fewer and equally, if not more spacious units for a more reasonable amount of tenants. And while it might not be visible from the street, the resulting addition in the rear, the final product dwelling would be very much not in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood as it stands. There's always room for development, but there's got to be balance between the existing character and growth at a reasonable rate. I would also like to add that the document PLN-CA, the supporting material, dated February 28th in the attached documents, shows non-opposition for mostly tenanted houses. It's unclear how many, if any, of the signatures collected belong to the property owners themselves. And if you'll check in the extremely late submitted documents submitted today, there is a PDF titled Non-Opposition Map, which has a visual representation of the adjacent properties, ownership, land use, and status of objection to the proposed development. What I'd like to point out is most notably the lack of support from or even contact with almost all of the single-family homes in the immediate neighborhood. It shows that 163 Admiral Road, which is a directly adjacent property, was not contacted at all in regards to the proposed development. 310 St. George is one of the only other families with young children, and their address was omitted from the list of addresses summarizing lack of objection on the PLN-CA. 320 and 322 St. George, which are directly across the street, so no support as well. So in conclusion, I just want to say that we as adjacent neighbors oppose the proposed development in its current scope and respectfully request that the application as it stands be denied. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anna. Any questions for the speaker, panel members? Okay, we have no questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Daniel Stern, you have been unmuted.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Daniel Stern. I am at 163 Admiral Road. I would not like to use my full 5 minutes for the panel. Would like to just give my support to Anna Paul in opposition of this project. I was never contacted about this project. I am very concerned with the fact that it looks like the house is not quite doubling in size with this growth, but looking to be about a 40% increase. I find that hard to believe that would ever qualify as a minor variance. That growth in the backyard will directly affect 4 properties that are adjacent to it. And mine is adjacent through the entire backyard. I would like to just state for the record that we would like to see variance not granted for this project as it is proposed today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, seeing none. All right, can I have Heather back, please?
Hi, thank you for letting us explain some of these issues that were raised. I guess the first one was in relation to the number of secondary suites, which is not a variance. So there is no requirement in terms of, there's no reason we wouldn't be allowed to have 8 units. So I don't think that's really the issue. I think that the major point here is context in terms of the street being a major street, the fact that there are already a lot of rental units that our client went and spoke to those tenants. The owners don't live there, so he spoke to the tenants and there weren't any objections. If there are other properties surrounding this that are single family within the 6-meter radius, they would have received a notice. So if they had any objection, they would be here today raising their objection, or they would have talked to our client about it. But in walking around, and he knocked on every single door within 60 meters, that list that was presented to you is only ones that he was able to speak to or receive a letter of support from. So he did actually try and speak to everyone, and we had an overwhelming support for this application, only because generally the approach is to try and keep the front of the house in keeping with the neighborhood in terms of the scale, you know, the width, the height, a peaked roof, a porch that's very similar to the other porches. So it's about context. So as far as the length goes, it's not a 40% increase. The variance is far below. There's a list actually in the document that we sent in. It's in the, yes, there should be a list of all the different properties that have a very similar FSI, like GFA, for the dwellings. You were on the, you had that open before just a second ago. It wasn't on there. It's on the summary pages. So it's page 4 of the presentation material. So it's a list of all of the similar properties in terms of floor space index that are in this neighborhood. So it is in keeping. This is the kind of street where the city, through the official plan, wants to see development, increase of family-sized multi-units in combination with single family dwellings, just to try and increase the amount of rental units that are available in areas where rental units are already established. So what we're proposing, we're not trying to propose anything that's sort of really out of keeping with the neighborhood, and trying to keep everything kind of to a minimum in terms of the scale. It's also, this property is very close to public transit on Bloor Street and on DuPont. So it seems to be like the perfect area to develop in this kind of way. So our client actually did speak with the neighbors to the south and suggested an adjustment to the plans, which they, I guess, haven't agreed upon yet, but he's willing to speak with them further to see if there's any other adjustments they would like. But in terms of the variances that we're proposing, we would just like to leave them as is, and would like to note that we really do feel that they're minor in the context of what's already built in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions? Mr. Cheng.
Hi, hello. Do you mind, for the staff, can you scroll to the key plan, please? Which is the first page of the plans, that's correct. The previous one, please. The one almost like on the cover page. It's more like a key plan. I think that would give us a better context of the relationship of this property and DuPont. No, that's right, that's the one.
The site plan?
There's like, the upper one, I
upper
think
one?
there's no label of it. Yeah, I think I just called it the key plan.
The location map? That one?
Location map,
Yeah?
right,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
Yeah, so I think the depth that you're looking for is similar to 325 St. George, am I right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't have a line drawn to that, but I think by comparing the site plan to this key plan, that's how I feel about it. So you're not really out of characteristic when it comes to the rear. I mean, you have a variance about the depth of the building. I don't think you're surpassing that 325. Okay, thank you. That's just what I want to confirm.
Thank you.
Any further questions, panel members? Carl, any questions? You're muted.
The person that wrote in suggesting that they wished all of the entrances weren't on the south side, is that person speaking today?
That person did speak today. That was Anna Paul, who lives just to the south of the property.
Okay, I guess my comment or my question would be to the applicant. Could you explain, it seems to me that putting them all on the south side had to do with you having more side yard setback, but could you clarify if there's some other reason for that?
That's correct. There is a slightly wider setback on the south side, just to allow for access to those side door entrances and to try and keep, the number of entrances off of the front. So that was the intent.
And my other question had to do with the second floor balcony, which is on A 3.3. Because of the extension into the rear yard, that balcony poses an overlook problem for the property to the south. Would you have any difficulty with screening the south edge of that? I don't think it's as prevalent on the north because the balcony is set back.
No problem with that at all.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just elaborate on that one? And just a similar question about the rooftop patio deck / platform area. What's the treatment up there?
So that is just to give some outdoor space to the upper units because they don't have a balcony. and it's contained within the kind of two pitched roofs, so it's not visible from the backyard or the front yard. So it's kind of like a very discreet little roof deck. So there's no overlook. The two roofs kind of screen those little roof decks. But basically, we wanted to give every single unit a little private outdoor space, just to make these units more livable.
But there is some sort of fencing or railing along there?
Yes, there would be a guard all the way around.
And no overlook issues to adjacent neighbors?
Well, the guard is, well, the guard has to be quite high when you're up at that level, but either way, we would put a screen up there to define those areas.
Okay.
So I'm not clear. If we're looking at the roof again, the two most westerly, I guess, patio areas, they have exposure to the backyards. So you said you would be putting a screen there in addition to a rail. Did I understand that correctly?
When you say west, do you mean the ones on the right, on the east?
Yeah, I'm looking at, just a second. I'm looking at your drawing. Oh, now I've lost it.
Pull up the side elevation.
Yeah, do you mind looking at A5.3, please?
There it is.
There.
Yeah, there you can see it.
Now, those the patio areas on the roof to the back of the building, the ones to the front of the building, they don't have view into the amenity spaces of adjacent properties, but the ones at the back or further to the back, they do have overview, do they not? By virtue of the fact that you're extending the addition so far into the backyard?
There's only about a meter, I guess, of overlap. So that could be a potential area. So that screen that you see there, that screen could be raised up so that there's no possibility of overlook whatsoever.
And in order to block view, how long would that have to be? So if it's 1.6 meters high, for what distance?
Well, it kind of makes sense to run it all the way across.
I think you might also want to look at A3.6. There's a little gap that's on the roof plan.
I mean, it's about a
It's a
meter.
very short distance that there's a
Yeah, you
chance
can
you
see
can
it there,
see through the
exactly.
backyard.
Yeah, exactly, right there.
So if she's gonna put a screen, that will basically be on the north
east
side.
North? No,
Maybe
east, like the
sorry.
southeast, right?
Southeast, right? Half of it.
Yeah. Yeah, half of it.
So if we were to define these screens, if we were to say the provision of privacy screen 1.6 meters high on the south side of the second floor balcony, and what wording would we use for the roof deck?
Probably the same thing. The south side of the east roof deck.
Why wouldn't we just run it right across?
You could. I guess you're just looking at the side of a roof anyway, so it's nothing to see.
It's probably easier to do it that way rather than try and be specific about, distances and such. I think just run it along the whole edge.
Makes sense.
Okay, I think we may have one other speaker, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just gonna check. Do you have Samuel? Hi, Samuel.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I have you listed with Anna Paul. Are you at 309 also? Were you?
I also live at 309 with my family. Anna has her.
So
family.
you're two different families.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
Alrighty, so I'm sorry, you were lumped in together. It looked like you were one family. So did you want to speak to this application also?
I would. I'd like to speak in opposition.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead? You have 5 minutes, starting now.
Okay. Well, I'd start by saying I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. Again, I've been a co-owner and resident of 309 St. George Street for more than 10 years. Our house is, as we all know by now, adjoining the property to the south. I think, as Anna said, we share in her view that we're supportive of appropriate development plans for this neighborhood. We want to see increased rental units in Toronto and in this neighborhood. Many of the houses on the block have been converted into duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. The issue is that the plans for 329 seem excessive. So our principal objection is with the scope and the scale. And we have serious concerns that go along with the idea of converting a detached single-family dwelling into 8 high-end units with 18 bedrooms, 8 separate entrances, 2 rooftop terraces. This is a development plan that will require a doubling of the building square footage, significantly reducing green space. So, we object on four grounds. The first one is these variances are not minor. The variances requested are too large and too important to be considered minor. Too large specifically in the request to extend the depth by more than 15 feet past the limit. That's like a 30% increase beyond the limit. Too large in that the altered dwelling will have a floor space index equal to 1.2085 times versus the 1.0 allowed. We would say that the variances requested are too important to be considered minor because they will negatively impact our sunlight, privacy, noise levels, views, spacing, and openness. And the architect mentioned that, that they're justifying these variances by referencing a small number of non-conforming properties in the neighborhood. The reality is the overwhelming majority of properties in the neighborhood do comply with the bylaws for building depth and floor space. And the development plan is not at all in keeping with the vast majority of properties in the neighborhood. So that's the first objection. The second one is the general intent and purpose of the official plan is not maintained in our view. The physical form of the development doesn't fit with the surrounding neighborhood. It may appear decent from the front, but we're talking about transforming a home into 8 units with 8 entrances. I think Anna did the math, which is reasonable to expect, occupancy of up to 36 people. So, we believe in the development of the neighborhood, but we believe it should be, a balanced development. I think this plan is excessive. The third point of objection is the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is not maintained. So in our view, the development is not compatible with existing housing in the neighborhood with respect to size, number of entrances, units, building depth. The development comes with significant concerns around our privacy, sunlight, shade, as well as safety concerns associated with sharing a walkway between our 2 houses, given the current plan for 18 bedrooms could house more than 30 occupants. So we believe also that the current plans, if approved, would set a dangerous precedent in some ways, which could alter the character of the neighborhood and ultimately threaten existing tenants up and down St. George, whose owners may decide to pursue similar large-scale developments for high-end rental complexes. And our last objection is the variances are not desirable for the appropriate development of the land. So again, we support converting 321 into rental units of appropriate scale. Simply put, I think, our view is the plans presented conflict with the accepted planning principles for residential zoning and could set a precedent which could affect the development of our neighborhood. So, in conclusion, we object to these plans for the reasons stated previously. And we'd strongly encourage the Committee of Adjustment to decline the request for variances. I mean, we'd be open to supporting a plan for 321 to convert into rental units at a more appropriate scale. That's it for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Panel members, do you have any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none. Any further questions for the agent? Okay, Heather, anything you want to add in about a minute or so with respect to the last speaker?
Yes, please. I think it's worth noting a few different things, actually. There will not be any impact on this dwelling, the speaker's dwelling, in terms of sunlight and shade, because our property is north of them, so it shouldn't have any impact whatsoever. So they don't have to worry about that. The walkway between the houses was made wider, so we're really trying to minimize any impact on them. But really what it comes down to is that we're struggling with the housing crisis right now. So this particular proposal is desirable as far as the Planning Act and the official plan. There is a new multiplex bylaw coming out. A draft has already been released. Two of the variances that are listed in that we're applying for won't even be variances once this is released. This is the exact area that's desirable for this kind of development. And the existing dwelling was a multi-unit house. It was actually a rooming house for a really long time. So the creating 2 and 3 bedroom units is a huge improvement over this, what was a rooming house since 2004. Those are really the main points.
Thank you. Any further questions, panel members? If not, okay, let's take it into committee. Mr. Cheng.
Well, I think if we are looking for the missing middle, this is a type of project we are looking at. And I understand that the entrances might not be very desirable to be on the side yard, but if you are creating an internal corridor to give access to those units, then basically the plans are killed. There's no way you can create that many units. So the question is, do we want to have this kind of density here? And is it appropriate? And I think they are. I mean, maybe I'm being too aggressive, but to me, the whole ML Road to Dew Pond, this whole block is ready for intensify. That's my opinion.
Mr. Clay and then Mr. Nipfel.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. This is a neighborhood which is benefits from being close to amenities, being close to retail, being close to transit, and they are large buildings on large lots. So they do lend themselves to redevelopment and intensification. And while I appreciate that the neighbors are concerned that 8 units appears to be excessive, I think that the way this is designed can accommodate that. It's a extension off the back, and I appreciate that there's a view that that is long, but as Aaron I think pointed out, there are homes in this neighborhood which are equally deep, and this is a large lot. So I think it can accommodate this type of redevelopment, and it's a sympathetic design, particularly on the street side where the architect has done I think a pretty good job of trying to replicate the facades within the neighborhood. So I think an effort has been made to try and integrate this type of development into an existing neighborhood. So for all those reasons, I too can support this. This is the city does need this type of rental accommodation in these types of neighborhoods that are close to these types of amenities.
Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. While I agree that the provision of additional housing is a good idea, and there is much about this proposal that I think is commendable, I do think there's an overarching problem here. If we're going to, every time somebody wants to expand housing accommodation, throw out the bylaw, then I think we might as well get rid of the bylaw altogether. Either that, or the planning department has to do a rather aggressive reestablishment of bylaw principles. Variance number 3 bothers me. That is a substantial increase in the depth of the building. And that depth results in the privacy issues that we've been playing around trying to address. I don't have any difficulty with the use, and my hat is clearly off to the architects who've tried very hard to accommodate what I would argue is a large building that is larger than this particular property can accommodate within the objectives of the bylaw. So I am concerned, very concerned, that every time someone comes before us and they're proposing an increase in housing stock, we should just ignore all other aspects of the bylaw. I don't think that's planning. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's responsible. I have real concerns with increasing the depth of almost 5 meters and extending the building into the backyard where it creates privacy concerns. So in its current state, because of the depth of the building, I will not be supporting it.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, let's take it into committee.
Chair, did you have any comments, or I can proceed with the motion?
I mean, I'm kind of inclined to agree with Mr. Nipfel that we are seeing so many of these, you know, where the argument seems to be for whatever the number of variances are, well, it's increasing housing stock. So I do agree with the depth being somewhat problematic. So that's my comment on this one.
Yeah, to me, the depth was the first thing that triggered me to look at as well. I was checking with the applicant, and it looks like there's a precedent case, just 2 houses north of it. And I see this whole block as one single mass on the street. So if there's a house on the north side of it, is already at that depth, I don't see any public concern that we'll have with this depth being matching with the existing. The other concern I had was about the doors being on the south side, which is quite abnormal. Usually it's on the main wall, and then you have an internal corridor, and I'm trying to look at that and see if it's justifiable, and there's actually more than 3 feet space between the property line and the face of the wall. So I guess the applicant is lucky that you have exactly the minimum width of an exit. So I thought, okay, that can be a pass as well. That's how I thought it should be supportive. Plus the location is very close to Dew Point. Eventually this area will be intensified. Number of units is not a concern, especially when you think of it as a mid-rise.
My observations on length, I totally appreciate folks' concerns, but my observation on length is related to what I think is the lot fabric in this area, and this lot in particular is already quite deep. And I did note that there was no rear yard landscaping nor coverage variance, which to me suggests that even with the added length, it doesn't offend any of the other considerations we have for scope and scale on a rather large lot. So just to kickstart things going, I'm going to see how this goes, but I will I will move approval of this application, subject to the planning conditions and forestry number 2, and also subject to privacy screening on the rear second floor deck and on both sides of the rooftop deck.
Okay, and Mr. Chang seconds that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? And I'll abstain to avoid a tie. So that carries, and so the application is approved with those conditions. And the motion was moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Chang, and Mr. Nipfel dissents, and I abstained to avoid a tie. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 21 is 21 Grasmere Road. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, a map, and 9 photographs of comparable drawings with an enclosed front porch in the surrounding area. And I have the owners, I believe it's the owners that are the only people listed as speakers.
Owen Cartwright, you have been unmuted.
Hi.
Hi.
Good afternoon, panelists and Madam Chair. My name is Owen Cartwright. I'm the owner and applicant for the 21 Grasmere Road application, and my fiance, Kristen Hunter, is also on the line. So I think we can probably keep this relatively short. Our application is to enclose the existing porch, which is an unenclosed porch on the same footprint, adding approximately 13 square meters to our existing floor area. I think it's a relatively straightforward application, so I'll keep my comments well within the 5 minutes. Our application requires two minor variances, such as were outlined in the application. The first one is in respect of the minimum front yard setback. This is slightly less, I think 20 centimeters less than the neighbor's house. And the second variance that we're requesting is in respect of the maximum floor space index due to the slight increase in the overall floor area of the home, because we're adding 13 square meters. The purpose of the work is to enclose the porch and to create a small children's play area at the front of our home, as well as possibly a small home office, because my partner, Kristen, she works in the film industry, and her office downtown has actually been demolished for condos, and now she works permanently from home, and she's currently working out of a bedroom. So we need the extra space in the porch and the extra segregated space with that in mind. Last point is the existing licensed front parking pad will also be maintained. So thank you to the panel for the opportunity to speak, and with that, I'll pass it back to the host.
Thank you, Mr. Cartwright. Any questions, panel members? Mr. Niffel?
A very brief one. The variance number 1 is an existing condition, is it not? You're not extending further into the front yard.
No, it's as outlined on the plan. It's basically the same footprint as the existing porch has, which slightly, as you can see in the plan, it's slightly more than the neighbor's property.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions, panel members? All right, let's take it into committee for a decision. Carl.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is very straightforward. The enclosed porch will cause the building to line up directly with the property immediately to the north at number 19. It's replicating what's existing in the community, and I would like to move approval of it without condition.
All right, do I have a seconder? Mr. Cheng, so motion to approve, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? That carries unanimously. All righty, item number 22 is 90 Lyndhurst Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. We have an arborist report prepared by Urban Forest Innovations, presentation materials from the agent that came in the supplemental agenda last night. Concern expressed by number 94 and 88, and 88 being the adjacent neighbor. I show one speaker. Do we have the opposition? Yeah? Okay. Can I have the agent, please?
John, you've been unmuted.
Well, good afternoon, committee. My name is John Sibinick, 24 Oviedo Avenue, Toronto, Ontario. I'm the agent for this application.
Hi, alrighty, I have one opposition speaker, one of the adjacent neighbors, so can you do a presentation, please? No more than 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Okay, there are two variances required for the, one pertains to the third floor addition and the other one is for the deck height. Variance number 1 has a floor space index proposed of 0.73, whereas 0.6 is the permitted allowable. Although the footprint is 13% over the allowable, an effort to minimize the massing and height to fit between the neighbors of 88 and 94 was implemented. Slope roofs along the front and the sides assist in the transition and laddering to the north and south neighbors. Also, the city encourages density. I don't think this is a major increase. As far as variance number 2, which is the deck height above grade, the irregular size existing deck is proposed to be replaced by a more rectangular shape. The actual deck width will be less at its widest point than the existing, but the front edge will be extended to the front of the walkout. This creates a more functional deck similar to what the north neighbor has. In reference to the letters from 88 Lyndhurst, the owner met with the owners of 88 Lyndhurst to discuss the proposal. They mentioned there were no objections to the variances. It was also discussed that the environmental aspects, construction, fencing, and access will be in accordance with the recommendations, including the arborist report and all other authorities to minimize disruptions throughout the building process. In reference to the letter from 94 Lyndhurst, the third floor balcony, although not a variance, is a compact balcony and it's located near the center of the rear wall, limiting the overlook. The ginkgo tree is a concern as well, but it will be protected as per the recommendations of the arborist report. The owner and the contractor understand that construction can be a nuisance for neighbors, but every effort will be made to minimize any disruptions. That's all I have for now, committee.
Okay, I just have one question, and I suspect this might be raised by the speaker, but is there, there's been discussions about the tree and agreement that the tree would be protected. I think I read something about the neighbor wanting something in writing that you're gonna protect the tree. I'm just curious if that's been done.
That hasn't been done, but there are, the arborist report is pretty thorough in their recommendations, and we do have to apply to urban forestry for all this permit work. So I feel that, you know, we're fulfilling everything that's required as per the arborist, who's a reputable arborist as well. And you know, I think the other concern was access to the rear of the property. So I think, you know, there will be some kind of construction fencing added to separate the neighbors. I think this is possible. Obviously, consultation will be required with the contractor. And I think, you know, the owner is intending to live here, so he wants to make sure that the neighborhood is in agreement with the work that he's performing, and he's not going to do anything to harm any tree because he's a tree hugger as well.
All right, well, let's see what the neighbor has to say, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nigel, you have been
Hi, it's
unmuted.
Nigel Schuster, 88 Lyndhurst.
Hi, Nigel. All right, we're starting the clock now. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, for reference point, the best reference is page 14 of the arborist report. And there you can see the layout of the trees. We have no objection to the variances. It's just the trees that we want to protect, which are so important to the characteristic of the neighborhood. And we'd like assurances from urban forestry and our neighbor that all will be done to, I think it must be, it's the plan of the property. I thought it was, that's it, yeah. That's the one. The construction fence down the boundary line between 90 and 88 would be to protect our property from accidental damage, so that would be a nice addition. The tree protection zone at the back, there's 2 tree protection zones, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is a large protection zone, protecting white oak and other significant trees. And then also there's from 5 to 19, we agreed that we could save 19, which was scheduled for removal, by binding it to the others. And we'd like to also propose that the vertical, the north-south boundary line for the tree protection of the protection zone 5 to 19 be removed, and the east-west line be extended to the larger tree protection zone that covers trees 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the purpose of that would be to protect the root system that underlies the fence. And so we don't want to, that little spot that we've got there between the 2 protection zones would be perfect to park a bobcat or something like that. So we want to protect the compacting of the earth at the fence and protect our shrubs and trees on the south of the fence line. And also our major concern is 22 and 21 at the front of the property, which is a red oak and a white oak. I believe 22 is a white oak and 21 is the red oak. Yeah. And so we'd like assurances from urban forestry that they will be well protected. And also the hornbeams that are on our property of 88 Lyndhurst, will be adequately protected as well. That's about it.
Okay. Panel members, any questions of the speaker? Okay, let me go back to the agent to see, you know, how he can potentially address this just with you. Mr. Sibanek?
Speaking, yes.
Alrighty, so you've heard some of the suggestions. Is that something you can work out with the neighbor?
I don't know if we agree to not remove tree number 19, because that is, if I could maybe make reference to a photo in my supplementary material under page 8. That gives you the condition of that hedge, that cedar hedge along that property line. And you'll see on that figure number 19, how it's, you know, it's basically touching the wall of the building. And, you know, I think that one there was, the arborist felt that that one was the only one to be removed or injured, whereas everything else was to be maintained, as per the arborist report.
What kind of tree is that? Do you know offhand? 19?
I do, number 19, let me just see, it's a pine of, let's see.
Cedar, eastern white cedar?
Eastern white cedar, that's correct.
Okay.
And I think there was a storm last week, and I think a couple of trees were damaged as well. So, you know, like, obviously, an arborist will have to come out to the site during the construction process to review this, because we can't just give a blank statement that everything will be accommodated. I mean, this has to be reviewed. Urban forestry has to examine it as well. I think we're doing everything possible to be in compliance, but I can't give a guarantee that, you know, that tree can stay. I mean, it's as per the arborist report. And I think, you know, there is a lot of privacy along that wall, or that south property line. Not sure there's anything else we can do. I mean, every step of the way, I think we have to, if there's anything that the arborist suggests, I think we could work with the owner with that, but I don't know if we could give a blanket statement that, you know, we can preserve everything.
Sure, understood, but it does sound like the lines of communication will remain open with the neighbor. So
It will remain open, and we're not objecting to anything here. It's just that, you know, we want to make sure that we can get through the construction process and not have a hindrance. But we're open to suggestion and future communication with the arborist as well.
All right, let me see if my members have any questions for you. Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is just a caution. I have great trouble in accepting that you don't need a front yard landscape zoning provision or a variance. Was the zoning on the application checked by the city, or are you going on the basis of a waiver?
Oh, no, the entire site plan was reviewed for zoning. And
no one identified that you needed a landscape variance for the front yard?
No. As a matter of fact, this is a 1982 plan. This building is unchanged. So Gabor and Popper were the architects of this building in 1982 with a permit. And this driveway and all the landscaping and the walkway is existing as per the approved permit in 1982. So
Okay,
there's,
just a caution, I'm really surprised. There's virtually no landscaping, and I'm not judging that. I'm just saying, normally the bylaw would require more landscaping in this, and I was just throwing a caution out to make sure that that had been checked. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so let's take it into committee for a decision. Anybody?
I was having technical difficulties there, so I'll let my colleagues lead this one.
So you're sitting this one out then, because you missed?
No, I heard, but
Oh,
I
you
just
heard
didn't see,
everything. Okay,
didn't see everything.
all righty. I saw you rejoining somehow. I don't know, it flipped.
My only observation would be, notwithstanding the concern about the tree, I did notice that urban forestry has not weighed in on this one. Which I did hear the applicant say several times that they were going to be working with urban forestry. So I don't know if we need to reflect that in any way if we were going to approve this. And secondarily, I do note that the balcony off the rear is attached to what in the floor plans state as an entertainment area, which implies that it's going to be quite actively used. So I think we should be ensuring that there's appropriate screening on that.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not clear that there's anything that we need to or should do about the tree that isn't already covered because the applicant's working with forestry and will continue to work with forestry. The second floor balcony is questionable for me. It's such a funny little space. With screening, it's going to be an awful space. I'm inclined to ask the applicant if he ever considered proposing just a Juliet balcony instead, which doesn't include all the privacy issues. And if not, far be it from me to suggest that the balcony should be bigger, but that little square with screening on it is going to be a horrible place to be in. But I think we do need screening on both the north and the south. So I'd be very interested to hear the applicant respond to how we might best screen that area, or whether he'd be open to removing it and using a Juliet balcony instead.
Okay, let's come out of committee. Mr. Sibinek, just
Yes.
to that point only.
I think the use,
Yeah, how do you feel about turning it into a Juliet balcony? I guess that's the
I
first
just
question.
want to explain that that third floor will be for the owner's parents. It's not a high-use balcony. It's more for their parents' use. So can sit out there, maybe have a cup of coffee or tea. And it's not for entertainment room is an entertainment room, but it's not going to be a high-use type of balcony. I mean, it does comply with the 4 square meters maximum. I mean, we could, I don't have instructions with the owner to go with anything other than that balcony at the moment. So, but I just want to stress that this is not a high-use balcony. I mean, this is just an area, an outdoor space for the parents.
Okay, thank you. Notwithstanding, it does pose a privacy problem for your neighbors. And I personally believe that for the neighbors' privacy, it needs a 1.6 meter privacy screen on the north and the south side. I'm just raising the fact that that's not a very pleasant space to be out in, and you might want to reconsider it. But you might want to reconsider it and come back sometime in the future. I agree with Larry. Both sides of that balcony need to be screened.
Mr. Cheng, you had
I
something?
just want to add that to the applicant, so he understands that we cannot assume this third floor can only be used by your client's parents. It could be sold tomorrow or sometime later. So for that reason, we have to make sure the public are being protected. So I think having the screen is really what we have to do here.
And it is labeled entertainment area, which leads one to think what its use is going to be for.
All right, let's go back into committee then. Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Notwithstanding the fact that I had concern about the lack of landscaping in the front yard, and I've suggested the applicant just double check to make sure that that's lawful. I don't see that there's much about this application that is a cause for concern. I'd like to move approval of the application subject to screening the second floor balcony on the north and the south edges. And like my colleague Larry, I don't see the need to put an additional condition about the trees because the applicant is actively working with the forestry department at the present time.
Okay, that's your motion.
Yes.
So that's to approve the application with a condition for 1.5 meter privacy screening on the north and south sides of the second floor balcony. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
I just want to speak to Cal before we finish the motion about the tree. From my experience, if we put that note in the decision, then the building examiner later on, when they look at the building permit, and also all the examiners, will have something to follow. But if we don't put it down and assume the client, the owner, or the architect will continue with the conversation, and let's say if Toronto Forestry has been very busy and not responding them, they don't have any boundary, they can still move forward. Unless somebody.
Okay, that's valid. I would agree. So you'd suggest, can you get the wording for the?
I'm sorry, I just want you to reconsider of adding this, having Toronto Forestry to be involved or to review is a safer choice for us.
So how would you word that then, Mr. Cheng, sort of that the arborist report be implemented in discussion with forestry or in consultation with forestry or something?
Yes.
Okay.
As required.
And that would go in the notes, Sabrina? It's not a condition that we can put on, right?
Through you, Madam Chair, are you considering for the record then that they continue conversations with urban forestry?
For the record, Mr. Cheng, is that what you're suggesting, or?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Because the building department wouldn't look at our meeting minutes. They just look at the notice.
I agree with you.
Okay. So with that added then to the condition I mentioned about the screening and that for the record, that motion is to approve this application, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Clay.
Chair, I think I heard you say the second floor balcony. Just to be clear, it's the third floor?
Oh, sorry, I did. I wrote it down wrong too. Okay, third floor balcony, north and south side screening, and moved by Mr. Nipfel. Are you seconding, Mr. Clay, then? Okay, seconded by Mr. Clay. All in favor? That carries. Okay, item number 23, 90 Alton Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, a covering letter from the agent, and a 6-signature petition in support, and that includes number 88, which is adjacent. Okay, I only have the agent as a speaker. Do I have the agent on the line?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and panel members. I'm the agent for the owner. My name is Felix Leicher from 33 Fernwood Park Avenue, Toronto.
Hi, alrighty. Panel members, do you have any questions for the agent? I'm not showing any other speakers here. Sorry, I don't know who had their hand up first, either Larry or Carl, so take your.
Larry, go ahead.
Thanks. Just a quick one. you mentioned, Chair, that 88 was on side, but 92 is the actual adjoined semi. And I'm wondering whether the applicant has had any conversation with number 92.
The owner had conversations with both neighbors, and they didn't neither express any concerns regarding the variances, but we didn't get the signature in support from 92. But that was, I don't know what it was behind that, but the owner, when I spoke last to them, confirmed that.
Okay, thank you.
Carl?
My question was the same one.
Ah, there you go. Any other different questions from any of you for the agent? Okay, Mr. Leiker, we don't have any further questions. We're ready to make a decision on this. Is there anything you'd like to add before we go into committee?
I think everything you need is in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, panel members, we're in committee. Carl?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a very straightforward application, and it's the sort of addition that takes place that doesn't, in fact, impose any kind of difficulties or complications for neighbors. I don't see anything about the application that is negative or controversial. I'd like to move approval with no conditions.
Okay, Larry, I saw your hand up. Did you want a second?
Sure, happy to. Thanks,
All
Chair.
right. So motion to approve, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Clay. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Item number 24, 890 Windermere Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. Planning is recommending refusal. We have a 6-signature petition in support, signed by residents on Windermere, and that includes 888, which is adjacent. Okay, and I don't have any speakers listed other than the agent.
Good afternoon, I'm Antonella Weil, the agent for the owners. We'd actually like to request a deferral to speak with community planning and work on something that is more in keeping with the bylaw.
Okay. And will you be also including conversations with your neighbors if the deferral is granted?
Well, she has had much conversation with the neighbors, and they've been okay with this this proposal, and I suspect they would be with the next, but I'm sure she will also circulate again. Yes.
Yeah, it'd be great if they present any changes. Okay, panel members, so the agent's asking for a deferral. You've heard the reasons why. So let's take it into committee. Mr. Clay.
Sure, I'm happy to move this one. I will move deferral. I do think that in its current state, it would have been a difficult one for me to support, just given the configuration of the lot, and it's very tight. So whatever the applicant can do to satisfy some of those concerns and those concerns of planning, that would be great. So I will move deferral.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Okay, so that motion to defer is moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Nipfel. All in favor? All right, that carries unanimously. Item number 25, 481 University Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, correspondence from the agent, a previous decision affecting the subject property, a revised map 2 from the agent, parking assessment by BA Group, presentation materials from the agent, bylaw affecting this property, and we have email correspondence from transportation, and they're not expressing any concerns. And I don't show any opposition speakers for this one, and I believe we have 5 variances before us. So do I have the agent on the line?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is Maggie Bassani, and I'm here representing the owner. My address is 181 Bay Street.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions for the agent? Not, oh, Mr. Nipfel has a question for you.
Just a very quick one, and it's perhaps very obvious, but what is is the space that is enclosed for and was originally intended for parking, is it being repurposed to actual residential units, and therefore it allows you more flexibility in the size of units and so forth?
Thank you for the question. If that's related to the reduction of the proposed number of parking supply, I believe, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm presuming
Right.
that you've actually enclosed the space, so it's there. And is the space that was originally going to be used for parking that you're now suggesting you don't need, and I completely buy why they're not selling, is that being repurposed to residential units?
No, it's not.
What is it being used for then?
The parking is below grade. It's an underground garage, so the reduction in parking will just allow the elimination of an extra of parking levels. It's not
So
going to be that space isn't going to be replaced with anything else.
And it hasn't been constructed yet?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, that was my mistake.
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes.
Any other questions, panel members?
I just want to make one clarification, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah,
with respect to variance number 4, prior to today's hearing, I was in communication with the application technician and the Deputy Secretary Treasurer about a technical amendment to variance number 4. There was a few words that were inadvertently missed, but I think in the version that is on your screen that has been added. Okay, thank you very much, because there is the words minimum as it relates to the proposed parking supply was originally missed in the public notice, but what you have on screen, the committee has added the words necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add before we go into committee? Because we're ready to make a decision on this one.
No, nothing to add, subject to any questions or comments from the panel members.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, we're in committee. Mr. Clay?
Sure. I think this is very straightforward. It's almost a technical kind of amendment, and it reflects, I think, the evolving changes around minimum standards for parking, and particularly given this site, which is not far from the new Ontario line and on the University subway, plenty of opportunities for public transit and walkability. So I think it's a supportable application to reduce the number of parking spots. So I'll move approval with no conditions.
Okay. Mr. Clay moves that. Mr. Nipfel seconds. All in favor? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, so item number 26, 28 Bathurst Street. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey site plan, covering letter from the agent, as well as a previous decision affecting the subject property. We have correspondence from the Director, Property Management Services, Corporate Real Estate Management Division. And that's it. I'm showing one opposition speaker, and I'm not sure if the second one is in support or not, but we can check. So do we have the agent on the line then? Yeah?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair. Eldon Theodore from MHBC, representing both the City of Toronto and Stack Properties Limited on this application. I believe the second speaker is the operator.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Matt Rubinoff of Stack Market.
That's correct.
Yeah, do you know,
he's not in opposition.
He's just listening in kind of thing, or?
He's the operator, so he's here to, if there's any questions that I can't answer, he's there to answer those questions.
Okay, great. So I do have one opposition speaker, I believe. Do you have him or her on? Yeah, we have one person in opposition. Can you do a brief presentation, no more than 5 minutes, please?
Absolutely. So for those who are not aware, Stack Market is a temporary shipping container development operating as a multi-tenant facility that includes restaurants, retail stores, showroom, studio space, catering, financial services, broadcasting and communication, and other creative functions. This temporary facility has become a world-class location, serving city residents, visitors, and even tourists. It is a business incubator with business practices that promote strong components of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and has received awards for its innovation. The development received approval from this committee in 2018 to allow for specific uses within the I-1D3 component of the property, primarily retail and restaurant components. And that approval was with the condition that the variances be in place for a period of 5 years. The purpose of this application is to extend that variance, remove the timeframe conditions, and to clarify that in addition, takeout, restaurant, and place of assembly are also functions that can occur as part of the unified center's vision. The rationale on the removal of the timeframe is quite simple. At the time, the concept and idea was new. Sufficient time has passed to demonstrate that the variances are appropriate, desirable, minor, and meet the general intent and purpose of the OP and zoning. And the operation of the site is on city land that has intended future purposes for parkland in the future when those opportunities and those funds are available by the city. It operates at the pleasure of the city through agreements with the operator, and any extension of that agreement is completely in the city's control. And when the city is ready to proceed with the park, those agreements and timeframes would not be extended. So given this fact, the timeframe on the variances is unnecessary, and the request as we've made, as we proposed, is reasonable. And with respect to the additional items as it relates to the takeout restaurant and place of assembly, this is just simply about ensuring that the highest level of flexibility to accommodate the small businesses that operate within the site are available. Those are really the principal functions of what we're seeking, and I'm happy to answer your questions that the committee may have.
Okay, I think we'll hold our questions until we hear from the opposition, and then I'll come back to you.
Patricia Robertson, you have been unmuted.
Patricia?
Patricia Robertson, you have been unmuted.
Okay, can you try, I don't know, do you have a phone number?
Hello?
Oh, hi. Is this Patricia? Hello? Patricia? Patricia? Are you intending to speak?
Hello?
Yes, are you intending to speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I was distracted.
Okay, yeah, please. If
I'll be
you
very
can-
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Patricia Robertson, I reside opposite 74 Niagara, and while the majority of the requested changes in height and density are largely in the rear and do not impact me in the same way as they do neighbours to the immediate north, east and west, I would like to support them in saying that this proposal is an overreach in height and massing of what is allowed. It also transforms from single-use residential into a mixed use of commercial, possibly retail, rental, and residential, which is a clever use of the building for monetization
Mayor,
purposes.
I wonder, sorry for interrupting, but I'm wondering if perhaps Patricia is speaking to another item.
Oh, I'm sorry. What am I speaking to?
Well, you are listed here to speak to 28 Bathurst Street, which is...
No, I never replied to that, actually.
All right, so then maybe, what are you intending to speak to? Which application?
17 Niagara. Sorry, I was answering another phone and then I heard my name.
Yeah, no worries. That's because I have you listed here, so I think you were marked on against the wrong.
Okay,
wrong one.
that's fine. I would have a comment about, I'm not really sure what's happening to 28 Bathurst.
Okay, so you want to speak for 74 Niagara, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we haven't gotten to that one yet. It's item 34. I believe I believe they are going to be asking for a deferral, but I'm going to move you there. So
Okay, I'm sorry for wasting your time. I literally was caught on the hop.
No worries. So we'll get back to you later on when we get to that, okay?
Yes, thank you and sorry to all. Sorry.
All right, bye. Okay, so after all that, sir, we actually have no opposition on this one. Panel members, do you have any questions? Mr. Nipfel.
A technical one, is the normal time frame for a variance to expire, does that give you the time frame you need, or do we need to state a different time frame in the variance decision?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're asking that no time frame be applied, and that the matter of time frame is regulated itself by the agreements that are undertaken by the operator with the City of Toronto. It's the city's lands. So,
okay, so under those circumstances, and just a simple question to the Deputy Secretary Treasurer, would this variance continue forever, or does it have a time frame?
It's asking to permit the continued use. I don't see any specified time.
Through you, Madam Chair, it depends on the decision that is made today. So if you were to allow a temporary approval, then the time limit would be based on that temporary approval.
But the actual.
If we said nothing and the city
If you said
wanted to
nothing,
exercise.
then the decision is final, permanent.
Yeah, it's permanent.
Yeah.
I think that, so there is material in the package which implies that the City of Toronto, as owner of the land, is able to terminate this at any point in the future should they need those lands. And I'm sure there are timelines and provisions and such associated with that. So
that is correct.
Yeah. So I'm inclined, Carl, without just to if we do approve it, just to approve it as is and allow the city to exercise its legal rights if they so choose to in the future.
Okay, and the city actually, somewhere in the material, the city already encouraged them to go for a variance. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't in any way closing options. So, I'm happy with that. That's great.
That's great. I just had one quick question, couple quick. So first of all, this is spectacular development. I and many of us have been there. It is a significant contributor to urban life and tourism in the area, and it's great. You're asking for, just hang on a second, a place of assembly. I'm just curious what that is. Is that one of the facilities, or is that the open area, or what exactly is the place of assembly?
Thank you for the question. Place of assembly is less about a specific building and more about functions that can happen on the property. So being able to have, say, for example, someone wanting to have a speaker series or an event on the site. Right now, it's not clear whether that is permitted or not. So if someone wanted to come in and have, say, a short series on urban life or some sort of product that they wanted to display, that place of assembly, that definition captures that function internally and externally, and just kind of broadens that opportunity on the site. And it's tough because we're working with the antiquated language of the former bylaw on that portion of the property. So that's where that falls under.
Right. And I presume, the planning permissions and the variances you have before you permit what is there now. Maybe this is to the owner or the operator. Do you have any plans for expanding or adding more in the future?
Mr. Rubinoff? We're just about to unmute you.
Matt Rubinoff, you've been unmuted.
Thank you, Matt Rubinoff. There's nothing currently in the plans for expansion within the site that's in the near future. No.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, did you have a question? I can't remember if you had your hand up.
No, I was questioning the assembly one as well. I mean, presumably you could have a small church if you wanted to, but I like Larry. I think this is a tremendous development, and I have no trouble at all supporting this. So I don't have any questions.
I'll just say I think it's very cool looking. Okay. All right, so with that, let's take it into committee.
I'm happy to move this one, Chair, if that's okay.
Yep.
So just reiterate my comments and Carl's and yours. I think this is a development which significantly contributes to urban life in that area and is highly supportable. So I'm happy to move approval of these variances with no conditions.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Mr. Cheng, so motion to approve moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Item number 27, which is 56 Inglewood Drive. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 4 photographs of trees on the subject property, a map of letters of support from the agent as well as presentation materials. We have correspondence in support from 15 Rose Park, and then we have 10 form letters in support signed by owners on Inglewood Drive, including 58, which is adjacent, as well as 11 Rose Park Crescent and 48 Inglewood Drive. All right, I only show the agent as a speaker. Okay, Ida, welcome back. Not sure.
Good afternoon.
All right, you're with us all day, so.
Hi. Apparently I am, Madam Chair.
I don't know that I don't think we need a presentation. Any questions for Ms. Evangelista, panel members? Carl?
I presume you wouldn't have any difficulty with screening the balcony on the south edge?
No, we're amenable to that. There are many. I would like to add that right behind us there is a very, very large balcony off their 3rd floor and on their garage. But if that brings a comfort level to the members, I am in acceptance.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any questions, Ida, we're ready to go into committee. Anything you want to add that's not in the materials?
No, Madam Chair. The application is very straightforward. We are, rebuilding the current 3rd floor to bring it up to today's standard, and it's remaining within the same footprint. It will be undiscernible to the neighborhood. And I believe what we're proposing is very characteristic to the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks. Let's take it into committee. Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a reason why a lot of people like pitched roofs, because you can, in fact, expand up into the attic space with virtually no negative implications for anybody that's in the surrounding community. This is a very straightforward application. The expansion into the roof into the attic space is so logical and reasonable that I don't think it really warrants commentary. I don't think there's any negative implications. There is a balcony, and it would appear that it introduces some overlook to the south, so I'm recommending that we provide screening on the south edge of the balcony. Other than that, I'd like to recommend or move approval without other conditions.
Okay, so that motion with screening on the south edge of the balcony, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All right, you guys were at exactly the same time, but I'll go with Aaron. So it's moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? Okay, that carries. All right, item number 28, 110 Bloor Street West. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 3 photographs of trees on the property, a covering letter from the agent. We have copies of 2 bylaws affecting the subject property, and we have a staff report from the TTC. And I believe they're asking for conditions. Okay, and I only show the agent as a speaker.
Through you, Madam Chair, Maggie Sarinsky will be speaking on behalf of the file.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee members and Madam Chair. My name is Maggie Sarzinski from R.E. Millward and Associates. Our firm address is 1200 Bay Street, Toronto. On behalf of the owner at 110 Bloor Street West, Inc., R.E. Millward and Associates is pleased to represent the application for a minor variance in support of a minor commercial addition to the property municipally known as 110 Bloor Street West in Ward 11, University Rosedale within the City of Toronto. We are aware...
Maggie,
Sorry?
can I just stop you for 1 second? Can you,
Yes.
first of all, can you just spell your last name, please?
Sure. SARZY
Okay.
NSKI.
Okay, also, I don't think we need a full presentation. So if you're okay, I'd like to see if the members have any questions, and then after that, if there's anything you want to add that you feel, isn't
course.
covered. Okay, great.
I was just going to add that we're aware of the TTC letter dated February 28th, 2023, and that our client accepts the conditions outlined in the letter, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that the members may have.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting us know that you're aware. Panel members, do you have any questions for Maggie? So we have no questions, so we're actually ready to make a decision on the one variance here. But if there is something that's not in the materials that you want to add, please feel to do so.
I believe the members have everything before them.
Okay, thanks. All right, panel members, we're in committee. Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a very supportable application. It's a minor addition to a large building, but I would like to note that it enhances the remarkable park that's on the north side. It's one of Toronto's great attractions, I would argue, and that this addition to the 110 Bloor Street is going to make it even better. I'd like to move approval of the application subject to the TTC conditions, which the applicant indicated she's aware of.
All right, do I have a seconder for that? Okay, Mr. Cheng, so motion to approve moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng, including the Feb 28th report with the TTC conditions. All in favor? That carries unanimously. So thank you, your application's been approved. All right, item number 29, 101 Enderby Road. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 4 photographs of the subject property, a previous decision affecting the property. We have forestry asking for condition number 2, correspondence in opposition from 88, 86, 83, 111, 87, 91, 99, 106, and 96 Enderby, as well as 38 Norwood Terrace, and from one person who did not provide an address. Okay, sorry, my sheets got messed up here. Alrighty, so I am showing 2 opposition speakers. We've got them both. So if I could have the agent. Hi, is this Sam?
Yes, speaking.
Oh, hi. Can you just identify yourself for the record, please? And once you've done that, if you can do a presentation no more than 5 minutes, and if there's anything you want us to put up, please tell us before you start speaking.
Sure. Madam Chairman, members of the panel, My name is Sam Salis. I am a Toronto-based architect with an office at 170 Dunway West, Suite 411 in Toronto. I am attending this meeting with you representing my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the owners of the subject house situated at 101 Enderby Road in Toronto, Ontario. The existing two-story house is zoned as rooming house with 12 rooms for living accommodation, housing underprivileged members of the community. The proposal before you calls for constructing a two-story rear addition to the existing house, 5 meters deep by 6.52 meters wide, generating an extra 4 rooms for living accommodation, for a total of 16. This proposal, unfortunately, generates deficiencies regarding 1, maximum building depth, 2, maximum floor space index, 3, parking stalls numbers, 4, maximum number of rooms for living accommodation, and a second addition to the existing house.
Sorry. Okay. Anything else? Or did I lose you?
No, that's it. I'm finished.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure if you got disconnected. Okay. So I'll have you back for questions after we hear from the opposition. Okay?
Sure.
Great.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
could we ask the agent to clarify something that I think becomes an issue with all of the people that are going to speak?
Sure.
There have been a lot of concerns expressed about the use of this property. In our agenda, we have many opposition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not clear how this building functions. Is it run by an organization, or is it Mr. and Mrs. Collins only? Because many of the people that are objecting say there's the owner, presumably Mr. and Mrs. Collins, say they have absolutely no way of controlling the activities and the difficulties being introduced into the community by the tenants of the building. So I'm not clear how are people admitted to the building? Do they go through some agency? I would find it helpful to understand how the building works.
Well, it is, like I mentioned before, it's zoned as rooming house, accommodating for people underprivileged with financial difficulties. They come to the house through their social workers. Mr. and Mrs. Collins and their son, Nathan, take them in and manage the entire facility. So they provide not just the bedrooms, but cooking, cleaning, consulting with them, looking after them. Like I said, they are almost all of them, people with financial difficulties. And the city of Toronto Housing, basically support them, give them the money, and they hand it over to the Collins.
I think, well, based on the same material I read as Mr. Niffel and the other members, a lot of the objectors are talking about, things that involve illicit activity and different people that perhaps need to be integrated in the social system. So if I understand correct, Mr. Niffel is also trying to determine if, I understand that they're cooking and giving them housing, but is there also psychological support, social support for these people that they're working with an agency? I think that's the question we have.
No, they actually work through their social workers from the city of Toronto, supporting them and guiding them. And as a matter of fact, I met 2 of them in the building in the past 3 months, going back and forth. And they look after their sort of tenants' clients. They bring to Mr. and Mrs. Collins, and they agreed that Toronto needs actually affordable housing like this for people who are not financially sound. There's a shortage of facilities like that, and when I discussed the proposal with them, they agreed that there is a need for this type of housing.
Yeah, I don't.
So they are basically looked after financially and psychologically, spiritually, whatever you call it, by their social workers.
I don't think any of us dispute the need of this type of housing and the assistance for people. I think the issue is what's going on outside that's impacting neighbors and how that's being dealt with by the social workers. I think that's the big issue that I saw in all the correspondence.
I'm not aware of any of these complaints or any difficulty having people like that living in this house.
But
what
you've read,
kind of problem?
but surely you've read the correspondence that is now on the file, right?
I read some of it, yes.
You read some of it. So just not to put too fine a point on this, but you mentioned that this is zoned for a rooming house, but is it licensed as a rooming house?
Yes.
It is licensed.
It's a license. If you read the zoning review, it is legally a rooming house stated as such, and it's a license for that, yes.
Okay.
Well,
So I guess the question is, and I'm going to come back to this again. If the residents of this particular project are abusing the community, where do people go to seek a solution? Because many of the letters indicate that all they get from the Collins is it's not our responsibility. And that's not reasonable. If somebody came to my door and said that my kids were running up and down the street doing terrible things, then it's my responsibility to deal with that. If the Collins are the landlords, is that their only responsibility? Does nobody have any responsibility for the behavior of the residents? Because that's going to be the issue on this application, frankly.
Well, it is. They are responsible, and their son, Nathan, lives in the building permanently, and he looks after everyone there, not just the premises, but even the tenants. So he lives, like their son, Nathan, who's a mature person, 42 years old, he lives in the building, and he looks after it. He's basically managing the building.
Sabrina, can I ask you a question? Because I don't know if you know the answer to this, because I don't. So I understand that this is licensed as a rooming house, but if a rooming house that's licensed is in fact taking in people who have mental health issues, different issues, is there a different licensing requirement on top of it actually just for the rooms?
It is. It's not like a mental health facility. It is just for people who just cannot pay, cannot cope with Toronto's expensive lifestyle, and they don't have enough money. So Toronto Housing, that authority, try to accommodate for them and support them and find them places.
Right, I understand. I understand what you're saying. We had already, I understand that, but because of all the complaint or all the letters speak to all kinds of different issues, and actually this question was directed to our Deputy Secretary Treasurer, not to you, about the license. So Sabrina, back to you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have a definitive answer for you on that question. I mean, ultimately, I'm sure people have put in calls to 311 to send out inspectors to the site, but that's more of a licensing matter that you raise. And
I don't know the answer either.
I don't know.
Okay, I think what we'll do is let's go to our speakers, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Salas.
Sure.
All right, so...
Cal Pittendry, you've been unmuted.
Hi, Mr. Pittendray. If not, can we go to Lisa if you can't, and then try?
Lisa, you've been unmuted.
Lisa Vella?
That's me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you please identify yourself for the record? And then you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Vella. I live at 103 Enderby Road, which is right next door to 101. I'm also a member and a director of Main Street Co-op, which owns, sorry, I wrote it down, which owns 83 Enderby, 87, 91, 95, 97, 99, 103, 105, 107, 109, 111. We also own 180 Main Street, 204 Main Street, 220 Main Street. We also own 2202 Gerrard and 2204 Gerrard. I say this to advise you, we almost own an entire city block, but do not own any properties on Norwood Terrace. I have a form here that I couldn't get through because I'm a little unaware of the procedure of over 99 signatures of members of my co-op, which I'd like to make clear. I'm representing as a member, not as a board member, like as a director. And I can answer all your questions about who and where goes to this house. I just would like to say that the co-op is over 50 years old. We've had visits from our local MP, Margaret, declarations from the Toronto Star. We're diverse with disability members, LGBTQ, as well as won 3 garden awards, one to help low-income people by growing vegetables. Now, what I have lived here personally 12 years next door to them. This is technically classified as what's called a personal care rooming house, which means they have to provide 3 meals a day, toiletries, they're supposed to have toilet paper and clean towels. They do not do this. Yes, they do need a license, but they've been switching back and forth because originally they were doubling them to a room and were found in violation. Currently, let me get the list, sorry. Where's the list? Currently, there are 2 311 investigations. There have been 6 violations over the past 12 months. They have over 50 911 calls in the past year. They have had 2 suicides from their members. They also, on January 25th, James V., a previously convicted child flasher and pedophile, was arrested this January 21st of this year, arrested again at 101 Enderby for violation and committing
Can I just stop you just with respect to the person you just mentioned? Can you please not insert names just because for privacy issues, please?
Oh, this is on public
Yeah, I
record.
understand that,
okay, sorry.
but I
sorry.
just think...
Through you, Madam Chair,
Hold-
through you, Madam Chair, Lisa, can you also speak to the merits of the application and the variances that are before Committee of Adjustment today?
The problem
Thank
is
you.
that when you're a rooming house, you have to also be compliant with the community around. And so right now, as I said, I was going through their current violations, but we can go back to as well. They're classified as a retire home. They do not adhere and have switched and had temporary passes to be a rooming house. As well, when they talk about variances to parking, they have 1 parking spot, but they park illegally on the street with no street parking and take up all of ours because on our side of Enderby, there are absolutely no driveways. And I, in the co-op, only have 44 spots for over 100 members. So we use street parking we pay for. They also park on the sidewalk. Right now, as classification as a rooming house, you can only have 10 people with the personal care license that they don't have but are applying for. So adding all these extra rooms would be in violation as the new rooming house laws that have to be everyone has a license by March 2024. The reason why I'm talking about all of these community problems, because yes, it does affect us. And as of yesterday, these same people that are never on the property, and when I have a no contact order with one of their ex-tenants and they still allow them on the property and tell me it's not their problem, it is a problem to the community. And I am going to bring it up at this meeting. They are aware of all of these violations. and they get their people from the government at the bottom of the list. It is not people who are in financial need. It is people from CAMH and from the justice system. And I say this because I'm looking out at my window, and as the person I mentioned that with the child thing, I am 12 feet from a daycare, Enderby daycare. So I am fighting for the community, and I'm sorry if it doesn't coincide with the variances directly, but indirectly, you're darn right, Madam Panelist and Chair and President and whoever's willing to listen.
Okay, Lisa, thank you for your concerns, and we certainly read all the material that was submitted by yourself and others, so we understand your frustration with the situation. And let me see if there are any questions from the panel.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. Before, they had to be forced to pay $20,000 to get an original tree removed from their property. I know that there's also one back there that's a little dodgy, which was already had 311 called on them because the branches are falling down. But it is in between their property and somebody on Norwood Terrace. So they usually have to split the costs. Or I know there's certain rules, like if you take one down, you have to donate or put one up. I know that it has to be sometimes split between people on Norwood and their property because their yard is so long.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, no, that's fine. And again, I understand your frustration. I understand there's a myriad of issues going on. That one, you need to take that up with forestry. Like, we are only dealing with the variances here, but one of my members has a question for you. Carl?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to clarify that I understand this. In order for them to run as a rooming or to function as a rooming house, they need to be registered or they need to have a license.
Yes.
As I understand it. And in your presentation, did I understand correctly that they do not now have a license? It's been revoked?
As of right now, they're what's called personal care. It's a little different, like their representative and I explained. They have to provide 3 meals. They have to provide 3 months. There's a bunch of regulations that they have to adhere to. And
that's required for the license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And who gives the license?
That would be 311. There's a bylaw. There's a
Toronto Housing.
Yes. I don't know if it's Toronto Housing. There's a special
worked
spot.
with them before on this kind of property, so.
And like I said, with personal care, it's a little different than just straight rooming house. There are rules, nutrition, and they have to serve their meals within a certain time. There has to be staff on there for 24 hours a day. There has to be.
I agree, but I just, your point was that the license has been revoked. Is that correct?
No, as of right now, I believe it's valid, but that was because previously they were running without it because they had 4 food handler violations, and those were some of the investigations and violations with 311.
Okay, and then do I understand, Aaron, I gather you have some experience with this. Please let us know. This is Toronto Housing that runs this, or?
I think I have a couple of questions, and I really want to help this person to be more related to what we have in front of us. So I feel like the speaker is challenging the legality of this room housing because of the fact that they are not serving food and many other little issues that this license should have been revoked or something, but she doesn't have that proof, and something we have to go back to the applicant. But I think it's more importantly, I really want you to look at the screen. There are 5 variances here. Which of them would you like to oppose? I mean, don't I know
adding more rooms.
General issues.
Adding more rooms. Adding more rooms.
Adding more rooms has to do with the depth. Item number 1 and item number 2.
And the parking.
Does that affect the neighbors around, or can you elaborate that more? I mean, this is your last chance to be more specific about the bylaws and express what you want, because we cannot be the person and say, oh, do you know the license?
Unfortunately, they the responsibilities and the lawful adherence of how many people they have now, they're having trouble keeping up with. Adding an extra 4 or 5 more people would exhaust their as stated, they're 90-something years old, and it's hard for them to keep track of all these people, let alone another 5 more. And it's unfortunate the community is having to deal with it because of the, I don't know if because they're 90 they can't, or they don't have the staff, or whatever the reason is, it's becoming over their head to run this rooming house.
But what you're trying to say is, for example, if this applicant got this approval and sell it to someone else to operate that in a very nice manner, then you wouldn't oppose this 5 variances. Am I correct?
No, as of right now, their windows overlook into my backyard and my bedroom window, along with their video cameras. But I don't say anything because I'd rather have the video cameras to record. But it's like a bird's nest view right into my yard, my bedroom window, and that if there's another 3rd floor, it would be another on top of that, people looking directly at me.
So there's privacy issues related to item number 1 and number 2.
I think it's number 5 too, Aaron.
Number 5 too, sorry, yes. Correct. Okay, I just really want to help you to articulate
yes, sir.
Concerns
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
This bylaw, so that is easier for us to make adjustments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for the speaker? Okay,
Sorry.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Lisa.
So,
Were you able to get the other speaker? Okay, Mr. Salas, I'm back to you now. Our second speaker, we're unable to reach them.
Okay.
All right, you've been listening to the conversation.
It's basically all these are stories and unsubstantiated. There is a cook there. They cook for the tenants every day. The owner, the son of the owner, is there all the time. He lives there. He looks after the property. It's a simple rear yard addition. It's a roughly 19 feet by 20 feet addition in the back. Zoning-wise, it does not affect the rear yard setback. It does not affect the requirement for landscaping. Somebody was talking about 5 minutes ago regarding social things, basically, and not building things. She's saying that she's not happy with having people there socially, according to her, unacceptable, and that's questionable, really. I mean, these people, if they are, let's say, for argument's sake, underprivileged, they don't have money, they're certainly not mentally ill, otherwise they wouldn't be living there. But we all are not rich people in Toronto. There are poor people out there. They need our help, and the city, Toronto Housing, is helping them and finding them places in room and house to live instead of having them living on the street. So her objection is basically not to the proposal itself as a building, as a concept. She just doesn't want what she believes is a type of people not desired for the neighborhood, and that's questionable, really. It's I mean, I cannot tell these people not to live in that building only because they don't look handsome and rich, or because they are not in a mentally very stable case and situation. These are members of our community. We basically accommodate for them. I think the proposal for that little rear addition is reasonable, and it's not large. Will create an extra 4 bedrooms for people who cannot afford to rent apartments or houses to live in, and they have no choice but to share a building with other people. I'm not sure about the quality of people she described living there. It's probably exaggeration, but like I said, we're talking about technically a rear yard addition, and not providing studies for whether these people are socially unacceptable, mentally unacceptable. That's not the purpose of this proposal. We're looking into having an addition to accommodate 4 other members of our underprivileged, financially challenged members, basically. That's what it boils down to.
Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I to the applicant or to the agent, I think you're misrepresenting what was said by the lady in opposition. Prompted by Aaron to address the specific concerns, she identified that she thought, frankly, in my words, the building that you propose is too big and it's going to accommodate too many people, and that's her right to. That's her view, and that's her right to hold that view. I don't think it's fair to attribute to her view all sorts of things that she didn't, in fact, say and criticize about the social systems. Having said that, I'm not clear about one aspect of the application. The variance that's before us talks about 16 units. The bylaw talks about provision for 6 units, and the purpose talks about increasing the number of units from rooms from 11 to 16. How many rooms are there now? And if it's 11, are the 11 rooms not in conformance with the bylaw? Because the information before me tends to suggest that.
Well, the bylaw permits 6 for basically room in house. We have existing, it's questionable either 11 or 12. I counted 12. And we're adding in the back 2 per floor, 2 on the ground floor and 2 on the second floor.
So 5 or 6 of the ones that are currently existing are not legal?
They are actually legalized 15, 16 years ago by another Committee of Adjustment application. So whatever we have right
for
now,
11 rooms?
For 11 or yes, we have a Committee of Adjustment approval 16 years ago, a long time ago, that they
How many
approved
rooms
that.
is it for?
We got up to, I think, either 11 or 12. It was a proposal calling for introducing a concrete handicapped ramp in the front of the house, and two rooms per floor in the front of the house. That was an application for the committee approved 16 years ago, I believe.
On the screen now, Carl.
Got it. Thank you. I see that. So the application, you've got 11 or 12 now, and the proposal is to go to 16.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, the approval was for 11, as per the previous decision on the screen.
Right, so that's what the purpose says, going from 11 to 16. So they did have approval for the 11.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, panel members? Mr. Cheng.
To the applicant, I would like to ask if you have speak with the owners or the residents at 25 and 27th of Northwood Terrace, because your expansion will be right behind the backyard. And I think you will be the only property that have your side yard abutting to the backyard. So that's what I want to ask you this question. And item number 1 has to do with this situation.
I did not speak with them.
Okay.
Any other questions, panel members? All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Let's take this into committee. Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The letters of opposition on this application are horrifying. And the bottom line to everything that we heard was that there doesn't seem to be the ability of the community, even with all of its resources, to manage any more density on this lot. It sounds as though any of the agencies that are responsible for trying to address the concerns and the complaints are already overstaffed, are already overbooked with concerns. I have, and to Aaron's point, notwithstanding the difficulties that are occurring in the community and on the street, and they're horrific, they're awful. Two things come to mind. One, there needs to be some agency that these people can go to for assistance. It sounds like it might be Toronto Housing from the information that Aaron gave us, and I would encourage that to take place. But when all the dust is cleared, what I'm convinced of is that this building should not be expanded to provide even greater density of this unique population because of the inability to manage that population. And on that basis, I have real problems with variance number 1. I do not agree with supporting the length or the proposed length. The floor space index, I have less difficulty with, but I have a real concern with the number of dwelling units, and that's in number 5 as well. So I am absolutely not able to support this application, and it has to do with the fact that I think this is too much density of a unique type for this particular property.
Mr. Clay.
Thanks, Chair. I will not be supporting this application. On the surface of it, variance number 1, the length, I think, is just too excessive. There were several letters from Norwood complaining about the length and the impact the additional length would have on them, and I think those concerns are legitimate given the proximity. The number of rooms, I'm not competent to speak on whether that's good or bad, the additional density. I think we all agree that I hate not supporting this because I do think, like all of us, this is a dire need in our city. And there are issues and challenges, as we read and heard, and all of us know about these kinds of facilities. But there has to be better oversight of it. I don't know if it's Toronto Housing. It could be social services. I suspect even it gets provincial funding. But clearly, based on what we've read, and it was extensive, the concern from the community over this facility is such that approving an expansion to it, I think, would be irresponsible, given those concerns and given the impact of a longer, bigger dwelling on the immediate neighbors is unsupportable. I would also, just as a comment, given Bill 23 and the prohibitions on appeal, here's a situation where an approval would limit anyone's ability to appeal to a higher body. Now, if we choose to refuse, if this applicant chooses to take it to TLAB, Frank, I think that's a good thing in some respects, because I think that would give a better opportunity, a more fulsome opportunity for the community to input on this, and I think would motivate the applicant to, to address some of these concerns and maybe even put in place, procedures that will avoid these kinds of troubles in the future. But right now, given what we're hearing from the community and given what we have in front of us, I just cannot support this application. I hate not supporting it because I think there's a need for it, but I can't do it.
Okay. Aaron, did you want to add anything, or?
Oh, I think Larry and Cal have spoken my mind. I completely agree with them. There's a certain, the intent is good, and I understand that as an operator, you have a number to achieve in order to be profitable. And I kind of get that the lack of fundings or lack of whatever might lead to this deterioration of the services being provided on site. Improving it by expanding it might help, but that's just speculation. I think at the end of the day, if we just look at planning, if we just look at the capacity of the lot and the impact to the neighbors, I think this is overbuilt. I mean, there could be other, I mean, if this property can be zoned for this use, that means many other locations similarly will be able to operate that as well. So I think this is just not a good location for such size. And I agree with Larry that given the system that Bill 23 have been designed, I think if we are going to disapprove it, then at least the applicant can still have a chance to appeal and lead to a better discussion.
Okay, I agree with everything that's been said, so I don't want to repeat any of the comments made. I will just say this, that as an operator, you know, you do have responsibilities, and I think that, you know, hopefully the agent can take some of this back to the owner. I don't think, and I think I'm glad Mr. Nipfel brought up this point, because I don't think some of the things that were, you know, cited as having been said by Mr. Salas, by Lisa, were not said. It was strictly the behaviors that were not being monitored. There was no mention about, you know, the people particularly or specifically living in the house. And we do need the housing, I do agree with that. But I just hope that this operator takes the responsibilities more seriously in terms of how the people living there impact the neighborhood. So with that, I need a motion. Mr. Nipfel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd move that the application be rejected.
Okay, so motion to refuse the application for all the reasons stated, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Clay. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Okay, item number 30. 82 Salisbury Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, a copy of site statistics, 5 photographs of the property, copy of the letters provided to neighbors from the owners, email correspondence from Heritage Planning. They don't appear to have any concerns. And we received late yesterday correspondence in support from the adjacent neighbor at number 80. I don't show any opposition speakers. Do we have the agent on the line? And we have one variance before us here.
Monica Kuhn, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. It's Monica Kuhn. I'm the architect and agent for the owners. Address 12 Sackville Place in Toronto.
Okay, hi Monica. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, there are no questions. Anything you want to add before we make a decision on this?
Sure, just quickly, I just want to confirm that the roof deck is existing. There is an existing dormer that accesses that roof from the 3rd floor, but it's quite narrow. And the rest of the area beside it is underneath a sloped roof and inaccessible. What we're doing is to capture that area under the sloped roof and create a wider dormer with a higher ceiling. And so we're not increasing the footprint per se. The existing GFA is already at 1.15 and we're just going to 1.19. So we're adding another almost 6.5 square meters.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel members or in committee? Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a very minor application, and I have no difficulty in supporting it. I would like to note that we've had a couple of other applications today, and we've had many in previous hearings where there's been no discussion or outreach to the neighborhood. I'd like to compliment the owner in this case on the manner in which she undertook outreach. The letter that they provided is very helpful, clear, concise, but it also gives all the information one would need in order to address any concerns. And I appreciate that. I think that it gives me confidence that the community is well aware of what's before us. I don't have any difficulty with the application. I don't think the community will have any negative implications for its proceeding. I'd like to move approval without any conditions.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Mr. Cheng, so motion to approve, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Item number 31, 25 BRALORNE Crescent. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 2 photographs of trees on the property, presentation materials from the agent. We have email correspondence from planning. We have a staff report from Ravine. I believe there's no conditions in there, but it's dated Feb 24th. 6 form letters in support. That includes number 27, which is adjacent. And we have correspondence in opposition from 23, which is the other adjacent neighbor. And I am showing 1 opposition speaker. Do we have them?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ida, you're back.
I am back. Madam Chair, can I ask, you mentioned that there was a letter, a memorandum from planning?
Yeah, unless
I do have something from
that could be
forestry.
I'm just looking here, because I don't, actually it's TRC, it's the planner TRCA. And I'm just,
oh, yes, that they are
sorry.
okay with.
Yeah,
yes,
sorry, that's my mistake, because I was looking at my notes too, and I'm like, I don't have anything from planning, but it's TRCA planning.
Yeah, okay, no worries, Madam Chair. I thought maybe I missed something.
No, you didn't, but
Okay.
if you can do a presentation, no more than 5 minutes, and then we'll go to the speaker.
Yes, Madam Chair. So there's, I understand there's a little bit of kind of confusion around this particular project, this application. As you know, when I read through the 2 letters, the neighboring property, the owners that have been living here for quite some time, they did reach out to their various neighbors, and they handed out and had a conversation with them. And as you see that they did sign the letters of support. They did reach out to 23, however, there was a communication barrier, but they did leave them a package with an email address. So they're somewhat perplexed as to why there was no conversation between the 2 of them when, the reach out was done. So what happened, as you can see, they did submit for a building permit. Now, the building permit of the scope of work that was indicated on the public hearing notice is, not actually, in fact, perhaps of what they may be doing. The one thing that is very important to them today, and the only variance that they have, is for a front yard setback. They are very minimally do not comply with the front yard setback. So back in 2021, spring of 2021, the way this home, and these homes go back to like the 50s. So the way this home is designed is you open the door, you walk up, walk down. So they thought that perhaps submitting for a building permit to make that front area, that front porch bigger, not bigger, sorry, just enclosing it and having a larger canopy over it, because they do have 2 small children, would in fact help the family, move around a little easier. So that was built, and that was built under a building permit. Subsequently, unfortunately and sadly, Mom fell down the stairs and hurt herself quite extensively. So at that point in time, they, unbeknownst to them, young family, and they thought that they could enclose it and create a mudroom to give them more space on the inside, so that when they are coming in with their children, they have more, there's more mobility with strollers and whatnot. So that's what brings us here today. So now, when they decided on, creating some additional living space for them, and they submitted for the building permit for the addition and the rear deck, the building front yard setback came up as deficient. And that's what brings us here today. So I would like to add that the neighbors, all the neighbors are quite happy with what's happening. You'll see down the street, which I submitted a photo to Jordan and Sabrina, late submission, over and above my submission that I provided. It shows that the homes that are being built in this area moving forward, albeit even if they are renovations, do have that enclosed front vestibule and 3 stories. So the 3 stories are as of right. Now, moving forward, I understand the neighbors at 23, are somewhat remiss. It's unfortunate, and so are the owners, Megan and Ben, because they really wish they could have had fulsome conversation, and they are still open to having that fulsome conversation. So, as I mentioned, that addition might not be built today, tomorrow, or, they're not sure. However, they do know that before they do anything, they need to sit down with them and work everything out. So that is known. But today, what is in front of you is a front yard setback for that enclosed front vestibule.
Okay, well, let's see what they have to say, and then I'll come back to you.
Most definitely.
Thanks.
Good. Madam Chairman, could I clarify one thing with the applicant?
Sure. Ida?
The variances before us has to do with the front vestibule. The purpose deals also with the third floor addition. There are no variances associated with the third floor addition?
Through you, Madam Chair, member, no, there are not. There are no other variances. That is the only variance. And
Okay,
it's
and
just
one of
strictly
the people that wrote in a letter of concern indicated that they believed that you'd missed a variance for balcony. Does that ring any bells with you, or can you shed any light on that?
Through you, so I would like to add that when they submitted to Toronto Buildings, just bear with me for 1 second, because there is a deck in the back. There is
There's a balcony as well.
There is a balcony on the 3rd floor, because as we know, there has to be under OBC. However, it is under the 4 square meters.
So it complies with?
It complies.
Okay.
Yeah, Toronto Buildings, they've reviewed all the, as I mentioned, this is, that scope of work is, on these plans to save them the time. However, that is not necessarily what is going to transpire, but everything does comply other than the front vestibule.
Okay.
And the neighboring, I would like to just add one thing.
Yep.
The neighboring property where they have the mutual drive, they have signed a letter of support. They are in agreement. They're quite happy with it.
Okay. Have you got the opposition?
Through you, Madam Chair, I have a Gerard and a Dina at the same address. Gerard, you've been unmuted.
You hear me?
I can. Are you speaking on behalf of both yourself and Dina?
I'm actually speaking on behalf of
actually, yeah,
Anatoly.
Nelia and Anatolia. Anatoly.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but it's just you speaking, right?
It's just me speaking.
Okay, so
and they are my parents-in-law.
Okay.
And I would first like to propose that from my parents-in-law's perspective, there was no approach whatsoever. There was no attempts to communicate. This fell on them like a ton of bricks. They are both not native English speakers, but
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can we get an address? I'm not sure who we're speaking with.
We're speaking with number 20. This is the son-in-law of number 23, which is adjacent.
23.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, from my parents-in-law perspective, there was no approach whatsoever. There was no attempt to discuss. Ida mentioned communications problems. My mother-in-law's English is not great. My father-in-law can carry on a conversation very well, and they were completely taken aback by the application and feel that they were not neither consulted nor given the opportunity. So just from our perspective, I'd like to put that on the record. The second point that seems to have been addressed by Ida, the letter from Nelia Chernik points out that there is a variance with respect to the proposed third floor balcony. It has nothing to do with 4 meters. It has to do with the distance, the required distance of 1.8 meters from the party wall. The plans indicate that the distance is only 0.57 meters. I believe various people at the city have looked at that. I haven't seen any specific correspondence, but unless I'm seriously mistaken, that is a variance. The third point, which I'm quite disturbed about, for Ida to say, well, this is only about the front footage, and maybe it'll happen, maybe not. This is seeking approval for a massive renovation, which includes the front and includes a third floor and includes a balcony on the rear and includes substantial construction on the ground floor in the rear. And of all the neighbors who were solicited so nicely to sign the form letter, and the people of 23 were not even consulted. The people of 23 are the only ones who share a party wall. They're the only ones who will likely suffer inconvenience, damage, property valuation changes, invasion of privacy, or reduction of privacy, rather, diminishment of sunlight, etc., etc. So, the fact that the owners at 25 went around and chatted up a few neighbors who are really not involved and avoided making any effort, as far as I'm aware, to contact the only parties that were really involved, to me bespeaks a little bit of maybe inappropriate strategy. I'll put it that way. That addresses Ida's remarks thus far. I would like, since I've addressed the variance which does exist, Ida notwithstanding, with respect to the rear balcony, I'd like to address Anatoly's letter. And basically, I think the position of the owners of 23 is that it would have been nice to have been consulted, that a blanket approval without some type of party wall agreement or arrangement basically puts Anatoly and Nelia entirely at the whim of the owners of 25 with respect to, how the buildings are connected, how the second floor roof of number 23 will be terminated, how the insulation is to be replaced or upgraded, how it's to be sealed. There will be substantial work required on 23, and if the application is allowed to proceed, notwithstanding Ida's comment that, well, maybe it won't happen, if the application is allowed to proceed without some kind of surety or agreement or contract or forbearance or whatever,
Jared,
then
you're
yes?
well over 5 minutes. I really need you to wrap up.
I'm sorry. Basically the only other alternative would be litigation to ensure that the owners of number 25 considered the damage they were doing to number 23. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel members, do you have any questions for the speaker? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Ida, can you please speak to the to party wall agreement, et cetera, and other issues raised?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I've spoken to the owners, Ben and Megan. Ben delivered a letter and a note relating to the variance and to what is being proposed. So, you know, I'm not going to get into he said, she said, but if the neighbors went and spoke to everybody, and Ben spoke directly to Anatoly, you know, I was notified that there is a communication barrier. Ben did ask to give the letter and note to their children so that a fulsome conversation could transpire. Now, moving forward, any work that is completed on this house where the party wall is affected, there has to be a party wall agreement. So prior to any work that is actually accepted by the City of Toronto Buildings Department, there has to be an agreement between the two parties, between the owners of 25 and 23. So, and when I say that, you know, this is something that may or may not happen or may not happen this year or next year, but regardless of if it does and when it does, a party wall agreement has to take place. Now, the two of them, you know, I'm quite surprised that Gerard stated that Anatoly speaks English very well, because in the past, he hasn't indicated as such. So now that they know that, now because they are listening to this conversation in its entirety. So now that Ben and Megan do know that, then perhaps everybody can put down their swords and actually sit down and have an amicable conversation on where it's going to go from here. But today, what we're looking at is we are asking for a very small front yard setback for their front vestibule. That's what we're here for today. Anything else that does transpire in future has to be agreed upon by both the owners of 23 and 25, and that will be communicated, because as we know, Toronto Buildings will not fulfill any permit unless that does transpire. But today, let's take a look at the front vestibule and allowing this family with two small children the opportunity to have additional space and have a mudroom that gives them that mobility, so that, you know, to keep their children safe and when you walk in the door and falling down the stairs. So if we can just focus on that, you know, and as I mentioned, that conversation will happen between the neighbors.
Okay, and just Gerard, just to let you know, this committee does not have any kind of authority or jurisdiction to put conditions in regarding party wall agreements. However, as Ida explained, there will be a conversation between your parents, and perhaps you can be, or your in-laws, I should say, perhaps you can be part of it, and you know, get that ironed out. And all these things are covered under building permit stage, so we can't put any kind of conditions in with respect to this. Okay, panel members, any other questions? Mr. Nipfel?
The photos that keep showing up on the screen, is that the project, the subject property?
Yes.
So in fact, the third floor addition actually looks as though it's built.
No. Through you, Madam Chair? No, it is not. what you see, and even I presented to you the subject property. And it's just the vestibule at the front. No additional work that was mentioned or discussed has been built.
Carl,
Then
those were not the pictures that were on the screen. Like, I'm looking at the ones in my agenda, and whatever we had on the screen before this.
Those ones here.
Through you, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
this-
This,
no,
this looks like
down-
number 15
not
and
it.
17.
That's not.
Yes.
Okay, so
that was
okay, so that just to clarify, that's a bit misleading. If anybody else is looking at it, it
Can
looks as
you-
though the third
Can
floor
the
is being
staff
built.
maybe just put the photos up under item 31 for 25 Braylorne?
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the subject property, because we had to submit the first two pictures, we had to submit pictures of the trees for the tree declaration. But if we move forward to the third picture, where it says subject property, that's the vestibule right there. So as you can see, no additional work, and that's why I wanted to give you also an angular shot, that southwest photo, to show you that no additional work has been done. The first picture that you saw with the two semis, with the semi-detached, with the front vestibules, that's occurring probably about 10 houses away. So that was my first comment that I had initially made, that homes that are, being renovated or rebuilt, they are all being, because of the layout at the front entry of these 1950s home, it's just creating additional, like a mudroom when you walk in.
Okay, so not to belabor it, but if what we've got before us is the mudroom and one variance, and the variance only deals with the mudroom, might it not be more reasonable and less confusing to remove all references to a complete third-story addition with cantilevered balcony and rear ground floor deck? Because the balcony in particular creates a problem because it's so close to the attached neighbor, and there's a privacy issue, but we're not dealing with that today. So would it not make sense to have the purpose of the application do just as Ida has suggested, deal only with the front porch enclosure for a mudroom? That's all we're here for. That's all the variances deals with. Can the purpose be adjusted to limit the application to that?
Sabrina?
Through you, Madam Chair, the plans that have been filed show with a new third-story addition.
So even though there are no variances, it should remain in the purpose? Is that what
I
you're
believe
saying?
so.
Okay. Carl,
Not really.
Carl has to stay there.
So under those circumstances, then I have to raise the issue of screening of that balcony with the neighbors. So might I suggest that we need screening at the edge of that balcony to protect the attached semi, even though nobody's going to build it?
Okay. So if you want to add that as a condition,
Well, it's awkward, but I think if the actual purpose is going to deal with the third floor addition, I have a concern with approving anything that shows that balcony without some kind of a privacy screen for the benefit of the people in 23. And that was one of the concerns that they raised as well. So it's an odd thing to do, but I would suggest that might be a condition of approval.
okay, what side would we be putting that on then?
It's on the east side.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's take this into committee, panel members, for a decision. Aaron, did you have your hand up, or were you just moving around?
Sorry, I muted. I was just touching my hair,
Oh, well,
contemplating,
well,
balancing all the ideas.
That's code for you have to do the motion.
There you go.
Okay, I wish I could be that straightforward.
Uh,
Let's have a discussion.
I'm happy, sir. I'm fine with this. I mean, I totally appreciate the next door neighbor's concerns, but the vast majority of what their concerns aren't before us today. In fact, all of them aren't, with the exception of, as Carl pointed out, screening. It's a vestibule. It should not have been built. It was built without this committee's approval, but it doesn't at all seem overly offensive. And as Ida points out, you know, these types of homes are getting these kinds of vestibules and mudrooms in the front pretty much around the neighborhood. I don't think, in fact, I thought it was quite a handsome addition to the front. So I'm fine with this application. And, you know, it would appear that the third story addition can proceed as of right. So that's not before us today. So I'll move a motion to approve this application subject to a condition that requires screening on the east side of the third story balcony.
I agree.
Carl, did you want to add something or not?
No, I didn't realize Aaron was seconding,
yeah.
so let Aaron do the second.
Will do. Okay,
Oh,
so
thank you.
motion to approve with a condition for screening on the third floor balcony on the east side, and moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? That carries unanimously.
Aaron, no touching your hair now.
Okay, item number 32, 2210 Dundas Street West. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations in order to comply affecting this property, showing one opposition speaker. Do we have? Yeah? Okay, do I have the agent on the line?
Julius, you've been unmuted.
My name is Julius DeRuiter. I'm a planning consultant representing the owner of the property.
Hi, I have one opposition speaker. Can I ask you to do a presentation? No more than 5 minutes, please.
Sure, very briefly, if we turn to the plans, on the first drawing, you can see a photograph of the existing mixed-use commercial residential building. It's a two-story building. It's a narrow property. It's the width of what you see in that photograph, and it's very long. On the ground floor is a commercial use, a coffee shop. Behind that, on the ground floor level, is a residential unit, and then on the second floor are 2 residential units. And we require 4 minor variances to address matters of not having space to provide parking, not having space to provide bicycle storage, and to deal with accommodating the existing residential unit on the ground floor because it's located behind the commercial unit, not above the commercial unit. That's my presentation, and I'll wait to hear the comments and react to those comments.
Okay, thanks.
Robert Brown, you have been unmuted.
Hello, this is Robert Brown. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you can please identify yourself for the record, and then we'll start the clock. You have 5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Robert Brown. I reside at 88 Spadina Road, Suite 212, Toronto, Ontario, Mary 5, Roger 2, Sam 8. I have been retained by the owner of 2214 Dundas Street West. That is the property immediately to the west of the subject property. You should have in your files a couple of photographs that I sent in yesterday. I hope you have them. First, I'd like to deal with the variants themselves. The variance 1, where you're deficient a vehicular parking space. This is not the prevailing condition of the other properties immediately to the west, those commercial properties at 2214, 2216, and 2218. Each of them have either a parking spot or a garage at the rear of their properties. In terms of the bicycle parking spaces, none is provided on the subject property, but the neighboring properties at 2214, 16, and 18 all have space for the required parking spaces. Variance number 3 is for Let me look it up here. Just a minute. Okay. Oh yeah, none of the properties to the west, 22, 14, 16, 18 have this condition. And variance number 4, the properties to the property to the west, that is 22, 14, does not have this condition. Okay, the conditions arising out of the unauthorized construction do not meet the purpose and intent of the zoning bylaws. The subject property, that is 2210, has an existing order to comply, number 19245793 OTC, issued in November 6, 2019. The owner has not undertaken any activity over the last 3 years beyond asking forgiveness. Recently, another Ontario Building Code deficiency has been identified, and it will be published this month. This deficiency is a floor-to-ceiling crack in the ground floor concrete wall at the rear of the commercial building. The rear portion of the building has reduced my client's vehicular access to his rear parking space, and therefore his rear space is only accessible by bicycle or on foot. I ask that this application be refused and that the applicant be directed to address the building code issues outstanding before returning to the Committee of Adjustment. And it's these building code issues which really are the significant element. And if you look at the pictures, you can see that this building is not what you'd call up to snuff in terms of appearance, and or if you did walk around the back of the buildings and looked at it, you can see that it's in pretty bad shape. So I ask this application be refused, and that the applicant be directed to address the building code issues. And thank you very much. I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Clay has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I was listening carefully to your presentation. You've raised a number of perceived violations. But the only thing I think I heard about the actual impact to your client is the access to parking. Is that so? You raised a number of building code issues and appearance and such. But is there any other direct impact on your client other than the access to parking in the rear?
That's primarily, that's the big issue, is that he has lost his ability to gain vehicular access to the rear of his property.
And can you just explain that to me? I'm not sure I fully understand from the drawings what the issue. So he's built on the right of way. Is that your contention?
Well, and I don't know. Did you visit the site, Mr. Clay? Because I can't. If you did, there's a little laneway on the sort of northwest side of this row of commercial properties, and the access to the parking is at the rear.
Right.
And properties, I think it's 2216 and 2218 actually have garages, and you pull around to the rear of the properties and there's a turnaround space and you can get into your garage.
Right.
2214 doesn't have a garage, but it does have a parking space. And in order to gain access to the parking space, has lost his ability to make that turn. It's primarily because if you saw at the rear of the property, the applicant has built in essence a little pot, or not pot, a little garden plot in a container. It's about 6 feet by about 3 feet, and that's little structure precludes my client's ability to swing around and get into his property.
And is that structure on an easement or a laneway, or do you know whether
it's on the laneway?
So it's not on 2210's property.
No.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant about that, but thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Niffel?
I'm building on what Larry's asked. I'm completely confused with where this, how access was provided to the parking in the first place. I'm wondering if we might look at the survey drawing, and maybe Mr. Brown, can you explain to me how access once existed and has now been blocked? I don't follow that.
Okay, just let me pull up the survey. Or
it's on the screen now.
Okay, if the staff can pull up the survey.
It's there. It's on the screen.
Okay. Now, you can, it's hard to see from the survey itself because it doesn't show that at the rear of those properties. Can staff blow that diagram up a bit? Okay, sort of centered again. So the you can see where 2210 sort of has a little swing to the yes, to the sort of northwest. Well, at that section right there, which is before you get to instrument number CT792429, on that wall there is he's now built this little garden, what would you call it? You know, sort of, if it was on a balcony, it would be like a little balcony garden
planter. A planter.
Yeah, sorry. And what that done is cut his ability, my client's ability to be able to swing around the back of the properties through the laneway and then get into his property.
But it looks like, Mr. Brown, that 2210's property line actually almost goes the entire width of your client's. So if your client was accessing the rear, was your client not driving over 2210's property?
It's my understanding that he wasn't. I know this is a survey, but when I walked around the site, you could quite easily, walk, and I could see where you could gain access through his gate. So there was more of a distance between the gate for my client and the start of that extension to the rear of 2210.
But you'd still.
Maybe if you go to the
have to
site plan.
cross you still have to, it appears that you still, if you're using that laneway, you still have to cross the applicant's property to get to the back of your client's property.
No, he gets in and he could gain access before that little planter box was put in by coming around. He wouldn't have to go into the over the 2210 property line. Yeah, if you could bring up the site plan. Yeah, we're getting there. Okay, the site plan shows that my client would have access without crossing over 2210's property, but because there's that planter there, it precludes his ability to to make the turn and to gain access onto his property. Now, when I walked the site with my client, it appears that the planter is actually on 2214's right of way.
I am at the Google map now, and I think there is no problem. I mean, It's just kind of difficult to understand that even I'm looking at a Google map that somebody is building within his own property line can stop your client from going to his own property.
Well,
That doesn't make sense. It means
my-
there's either a right of way that has been determined legally, but if not, then the owner of this property have the right to block it, and you have to find your own way to get in.
The building itself, 2210, is built right to the lot line.
Yes.
Over and above that, he has built a planter box. And that planter box extends to the extent that it's my owner or my client can't now access his gateway entrance to his rear yard. It's the planter box that's causing the issue because it's not located on the 2210 property.
So there's no easement showing on the survey, so maybe it's best, Chair, that we hear from the applicant, because I think this is kind of confusing to us.
All right. Mr. De Ruiter?
Yeah, thank you. Just staying with the drawing that's on the screen, my client's building covers 100% of their property. So you see the outline of their building. You see on the very left side, there's almost like a triangular shaped building. It refers to it as a garage. That's not part of my client's property. That's somebody else's property. I don't know who owns it. And it is or had been used at sometimes as a garage. It's not part of my client's site. My client, I looked at the deed to my client's property. My client does not have a right of easement over that right of way that you saw on the survey. If you can go back to the survey, which should be the next item on your list there. If you go back to the survey drawing, you can see the reference to the right of way, and it does go up to my client's property, but my client, through his deed, does not have a right of access to use that right of way, and he doesn't need to. He's not proposing to put any parking within his existing structure. He doesn't have parking. He doesn't need parking. He's not using parking. You can also see on the survey that my client's building jogs around along their west property line and along the rear property line of 2214, and it visibly shows that it's cutting off access to 2214's ability to drive through that easement to the back of their property. So I don't know how they get there, or if they cross other neighbors' properties that are the other lots to the west, but they don't need my client's property to get access. In any case, we have an existing building that's 2 stories. My client bought it 3 years ago. He understands that there are some building code issues that need to be addressed. But first of all, we need to deal with the zoning deficiencies that were raised as part of that order to comply. And that's what this application is dealing with, is the fact that there's a residential unit on the ground floor behind the commercial unit fronting Dundas Street. And that is what this application is primarily dealing with. The existing 2 residential units on the second floor have been there for some time, and they're not at issue here. So again, to confirm, we don't own that old concrete block garage building to the north or behind or touching, I guess, our structure. And I think a lot of the photographs that Mr. Brown had shown you just are focusing more on that concrete structure that's in very poor condition. I'm happy to answer any questions if I've missed something.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, let's take it into committee then.
Okay, I'm not scratching my hair. It's an actual hand going up.
Excellent, your hand is up. Okay, the floor is all yours.
Yes, so I just want to start the discussion by saying that looking at the variances, it's about parking, bicycle storage, and an existing wall. And about the uses and the mixed use. And I really don't think approving this variances would create any obstruction to any other neighbors. And I really cannot understand why that the building or whatever is going on is, creating that trouble to the neighbor. I think if that's the planter, they should talk to the planter is not in this variances. If that's if the planter is the one blocking the entrance, then they should talk to the owner separately. The planter is not in this variances, so I would suggest to approve it as is.
Got a motion?
Yes, that's a motion I would like to move.
Let's second that.
All right, motion to approve the application moved by Mr. Chang, seconded by Mr. Nipfel. All in favor? Okay, thank you. I'd like to take 10-minute break and then start with the next time slot, which is item 3310 Langmark Avenue. So we'll come back at 5:40. right, Larry, if you can hear me, we're starting with item number 33, 10 Langmark Avenue. And I'll just read what we have before us, which isn't a lot. It's a copy of the plan of surveys, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. Okay, well, we can go ahead with 3 anyways. All right, I don't have any speakers other, oh, you're there, grand. Okay, I only have the agent as a speaker.
No, the agent, this is Mike, the owner.
Oh, hi.
The agent has gone out of business in the interim, so
Oh, well,
I'm.
there you go. You're listed as an agent, so you're.
Oh, cool.
You
I can
know.
be the agent.
All right. So you're the homeowner then at 10
Yes.
Langmark? Okay.
Yes.
I don't think we need a presentation from you. We have one variance before us. Does anyone have a question for Mike? No? Okay, Mike, we're actually ready to make a decision on this. We've read the material. Anything you want to add before we go into committee?
No, I think it's straightforward.
Okay, we're in committee. Panel members. Carl?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is very straightforward and extremely minor. It's canopy over existing porch. The porch is already there. And I believe it matches the neighbor. I don't see there being any difficulties. I'd like to move approval without condition.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Mr. Chang, motion to approve, moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Chang. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Our next item is item number 34, 74 Niagara Street. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, revised site plan, floor plans, and elevations. We have a revised zoning notice, email correspondence from the agent. We have a deferral request from the agent, copy of correspondence sent to neighbors from the applicants. We have a staff report from community planning asking for conditions. We have 3 signature petition in support from owners of 100 Niagara Street, 628 Wellington, and 628 Wellington Street West. 1 signature petition in support of a property on Bathurst Street. Correspondence expressing concern from 76 Niagara, which is adjacent. Correspondence in opposition from Patricia Robertson on behalf of the Niagara Neighborhood Now Residents Association. We also have a deferral request on this. So I do show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposition speakers. Do we have them all?
I have 2 of the 6 opposition speakers.
All right, who do we have then?
I have David and Ricardo.
Okay, all right.
Through you, Madam Chairman, is this the one where the lady
Yeah.
signed in earlier at the
Yeah.
wrong application?
Yeah, I did count her as number 6. She's the one, actually, the correspondence, Patricia Robertson, Niagara Neighborhood Now Residents Association. So, but she's not on the line, but I'm gonna go to the applicant just briefly on the deferral.
Sal, you've been unmuted.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Would you like me to make a brief presentation on the request for the
No,
deferral?
actually, if you can just tell me why you need the deferral, and then I will go to the 2 people that we do show in opposition. And we also, in case you weren't listening earlier, Patricia Robertson was actually listed under the wrong application. So I did notify her that you were asking for deferral at that time. So I've only got 2 speakers, so if you can just tell us why you want the deferral, and then I'll just go to those 2 speakers briefly to see if they're okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we need to get the deferral because we put a lot of lead-up work working with both city planning and the residents, but the zoning notice that was completed for the application identified the side yard setbacks incorrectly. It was actually, and I thank the letter of concern that was submitted from the adjacent neighbor. It brought it to all our attention. I'm going to take onus as well. We didn't look at it as critically as we should have because it's an existing condition. Nonetheless, proper notice needs to be provided. We've corrected the variance with what the actual condition is, and that's the reason for the deferral.
Okay. And all right, once you do that, will you be, speaking to the neighbors? just before you come back to us, just to eliminate.
Are we gonna give the neighbors a chance to speak now?
It's only to the deferral. I mean, we're not going to hear the whole application if we're looking at a deferral, so I'm only asking them about the deferral. That's it.
Yeah, we're gonna do our best, as we've done to this point, to try and work with the neighbors.
Okay, great. All right, do you have David on the line?
David, you've been unmuted.
And I am at 585 Wellington Street West. I'm just the property directly north of the property in question. I'm fine with the deferral. There's just one thing that I'll say, and I know that we will talk about this in the upcoming meeting.
Okay.
But I think that there should be a correction to this. They're talking about this being a 3-story mixed use, converting this into a 3-story mixed use building. And it really will be a 4-story mixed use building, because it's the first floor and second floor that currently exist, plus a 3rd floor and a 4th floor that they're adding on. So I think that should be corrected in the application as well, because I think it's a bit misleading. Other than that, we'll wait for the deferral. And I hope that they will be in touch with us, because actually, in fact, there was only one effort made to reach out to us. So I hope that they will, in good faith, reach out to us.
Okay, thank you very much. And as committee members, we always encourage on any deferral that the applicants consult with the neighbors and work with them as much as possible, because it is in their best interest when matters come back. And Mr. Creamy is listening, so he can also double check with zoning with respect to the comment you made about the stories. All right, do you have Ricardo?
I live at 589 Wellington Street. I am okay with the deferral. However, I would highlight that I have zero contact with this application. There's been no contact with neighbors. I'm very concerned about the zoning in regards to how tall the building is going to be and how close to my property they're intending on building that. I'll wait for the revised, and I encourage the neighbor to contact us and find a good solution.
Thank you very much, sir. You don't have Patricia Roberts. You do have her? Okay.
Hello, I'm fine with the deferral.
Okay.
My point of view is from across the, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, my point of view is from across the road. I am concerned that this formerly family residential building is going to go into a mixed-use commercial building, and worrying that, in fact, this could create a precedent for further commercial use in a street that is actually becoming increasingly residential. We have the coffin factory turning into the essery. And so I think we need to look at this about the impact on it from the street as well as from the neighbors. That's what I'm saying, really.
All right. Thank you very much, Patricia. And Mr. Creamy, you've heard the 3 people that are here. There were another 3 listed. However, they're all okay with the deferral, but again, can you please take the time to consult with these people before you come back? Okay.
No, it's of something that's very important to myself, and I express that to all the applicants that I do work with. We did it up to this point. If we don't have any contact info for anybody that was present on the hearing today, I'll be sure to reach out to Committee of Adjustment staff that should provide that, so we can facilitate conversations.
Yeah, please do. In particular, the 3 people who spoke today, as well as the other 3 that were listed. I think it's to your benefit at the end of the day if you can do that.
Will do.
All right, so panel members, we're in committee to the deferral. Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This, obviously, we can't proceed because the information is incorrect, so I'd move a deferral.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Mr. Chang, so a motion to defer. And if you can please put a note that this is also to include consultation with the community. Moved by Mr. Nifel, seconded by Mr. Chang. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Okay, item number 35. 966 St. Claren's Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. And I have one speaker, which is the agent. Do we have?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Hi, how are you?
Not bad, how are you?
Great, and your name is?
Enrique Valencia. I'm the agent for Henry Ongo, the owner of 966 St. Claren's.
Okay, panel members, we have two variances before us. Do you have any questions for the agent? Mr. Clay.
Thanks, John. I'm just going to ask the obvious question about soft landscaping. I'm assuming that's an existing condition and it's relative to where the current property line is. Is that true? Is that
Through you, Madam Chair. So right now, the existing condition is about 54%. We are reducing it, but it does extend towards the front to the sidewalk. So there is an area that hasn't been added to it because it's not part of the property.
Oh.
So you can see right now, if you go to the existing site plan, you'll see the areas that I did calculate. Just one down. Oh. Oh, right there. So you can see the grass hatch that's there, right in front beside the stairs. That is 54% of the total. And that's along the front exterior wall. Once you go into the proposed site plan, which is the next page, you'll see that's how much I have left on the property itself within the lot lines, but it does extend towards to the front of the sidewalk. Those areas that you just went over on the mouse on the site plan, those are not included in the site statistics.
I see.
I only include whatever's within the lot lines as a whole.
Carl, you have a question?
Yeah, could we get drawing A400 on the screen?
Yeah, that's a better representation.
My concern is that variance number 1, a pedestrian entrance leading exclusively to a secondary suite is not permitted in the front wall of the building. And one of the reasons for that is they don't want that to be dominating the streetscape. In most cases, those entrances are hidden in some way. There's been a turn, there's a bit of screening. In your particular case, the entrance to the underground suite is, I would argue, probably the most dominant thing on the street. There's another drawing, I don't know if it's a little further along, that shows that there's a, no, that's not it either. Hold on just one second, see if I can find it. There's a great big trough that leads to the roadway, and I wonder if you've looked at any other alternatives to providing that, because I'm not sure that that's the intent and purpose of the bylaw. I don't really have trouble with the extra entrance to the basement, but I do think the way it's configured here is overly dominant on the streetscape.
So through you, Madam Chair, we did go through a whole design process with this particular application, because right now the house is under construction with another permit. That was phase 1. This is phase 2. Because of the location of the walkout, precisely. We intended to put it in the back. I know most municipalities in Toronto don't want 2 front entrances on the main front facade. In this case, we thought this would be the best for 2 reasons. One, if we were to put it in the back, there's a safety concern, and there's no right of way on the side. So if the neighbor ever decides to put any type of fence or anything like that, not that it sounds realistic, but it is possible. It can just be a fire safety concern. The other one is that the services are coming in from the street right along where I'm proposing the retaining wall. And originally, to hide it, we were gonna offset it to one side so that you wouldn't be able to see it. However, it would still look like a giant hallway going through. The other point to kind of lessen the burden on this application is if you go along St. Clarence, there is a number of, I would say at least a handful of properties that have a similar configuration, with the neighbor being the most obvious one. Whether or not it's a legal second unit, that's something else, but it is another entrance on the front facade. So it's not completely new to the neighborhood, and if for all intents and purposes, I grew up in this neighborhood as well. My childhood was in one of these basements just off Alburn in the other side of the road. But and it had two entrances like that likewise. But I know in particular there's two addresses on St. Clarence, and I have a list of them: 956, 964, 976. 1062 and 1043. Those are all the properties that at least I found on St. Clarence that have a second entrance. So I don't know if that helps your concern.
And the street line on this is just about at the base of the stairway up to the front door. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't want to change your design, but there are solutions that you can have the staircase running in an L shape, move the door of the basement to the side, then you will have one entrance from the street. When you go straight to the basement, you turn left, that's your second floor. I mean, that's the ground floor. But anyway, that's just my little comment for you. You don't have to move it to the back to achieve the result that Kyle was mentioning. I guess you have also mentioned, I'm just some of thought, maybe you can still change the design and make it looks better for your clients. But I don't have any objection about it. It looks weird, to be honest with you, and it's a place for snow collection. But I'm glad that you can quote some examples, but yeah, just some idea that if we approve it, you might want to reconsider of combining both entrance with one single walkway and branch out to the second floor. That will give you a nicer look to the street.
Now, we had considered it. We considered going up the stairs and then from that platform off that secondary grade level, to go down towards to the right. But the stairs weren't working, and they would have to relocate the services.
I
So
see.
that it's really in an effort to save the client money. I had my engineers on site, and unfortunately this was the best solution. But the neighbor next door did give us confidence, whether it's either that was done legally or it's already there. One of the two things. I do have letters of support from both the neighbors as well. Just to add that point, I only received them today, so I apologize to Wilser for handing it in late. But yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions, panel members? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Okay, let's take it into committee. Mr. Clay.
Thanks, Chair. I agree that it is an awkward looking.
I'm sorry if you guys can hear the noise in the background, but there's some kind of women's festival going on down here, so I don't know.
It's International Women's Day.
I know. Okay, sorry, Larry.
No worries. I would agree with everyone that it's an awkward solution. But I'm not sure at this stage that there is a better solution, and I'm not sure incrementally that either deferring or refusing it would necessarily come back with a better solution. And I do acknowledge that the next door neighbor, whether it's illegal or illegal, is there, and there are several other basement walkouts that aren't dissimilar to this on St. Claren's. And it is a feature, I think, of the way the road slopes, yet the houses don't. So it's kind of an interesting decline, yet the houses are staying level. So as you go along the street, the houses get higher and higher, or the street gets deeper and deeper. So it's an unusual configuration of the housing stock along the street, which leads to these kinds of proposals. So I'm not opposed to it. I acknowledge the awkwardness, but I don't think it's necessarily out of character with the stock in the immediate vicinity.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, if you put a garage there with a garage door, you wouldn't have this bylaw issue. So it is what it is. I think it's not terrible enough to reject the application.
I agree. I was trying to work on that while some of the other conversation was going on. So I apologize that this has already been covered. I'm also concerned with the 1% landscaping, but I realize, I mean, this is a heavily constrained site. Have we explored whether there's any opportunity of providing interlocking paving to, notwithstanding the 1%, at least make some of the front yard area permeable?
It's a great idea. At a minimum, the walkway entrance into the basement walkout, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a good solution. I hadn't, we'd overlooked that.
Okay.
So and I don't think that would give the contractor any difficulty.
No.
They're excavating anyways, right? So, I'm happy to move, Chair. I'm happy to move approval of this one, subject to that condition which we just discussed, that the walkway be constructed of permeable pavers.
Okay. And so that's moved by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Nipfel. All in favor? That carries unanimously. The next item is item 36, 440 Arlington Avenue. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. Forestry is asking for condition number 2. We have 2 variances before us. And I only show the agent as a speaker.
Mario, you've been unmuted.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee. It's Mario Silva, agent for the application. We have 3 variances, not 2, as you
sorry,
suggested.
it's, you know what, I'm so distracted with the noise behind me that I'm looking at the right thing and reading the wrong one, so sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, the proposed is
I don't know if we have any questions for you, panel members. We actually don't have any questions, but if there's something you want to add before we go into committee, feel free.
These are minor variances. Therefore, unless there's any questions, I yield my time.
Okay, I think we're okay. So let's take it into committee. Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is extremely minor. The variances are small. The impact is negligible. I'd like to move approval, subject to forestry condition number 2.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Okay, so motion to approve moved by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Clay, including forestry condition number 2. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Item number 37, 2998 Dundas Street West. We have before us a copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, 15 photographs of trees on the property. Forestry is asking for condition number 2, and we have 1 variance before us. Okay, just the agent as a speaker.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. Your name, please?
My name is Ken Tai from Tai Architects. Good afternoon, committees.
Okay, good afternoon to you. Panel members, do you have any questions for the agent? No? Okay, Mr. Tai, we are ready to make a decision on this. We've read the material. Anything you want to add before we go into committee?
I'm okay. If you have any questions, just ask me. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I'm just
Yeah?
kind of slowly catching up to this one.
Okay.
So this is about a patio in the rear.
Yeah.
So what, I haven't had a chance to look and find out, what's behind you in the rear? Is that a laneway?
Yeah, this is a laneway.
So is there residential in behind?
It's a laneway and all garage behind it.
Oh, so there's no impact necessarily on the resident in behind? No, that looks fine.
No. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to suggest some sort of screening or noise abatement, but it doesn't look like in this instance it's required. It's all commercial along that strip, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's no opposition from the residents at the back, so I think they're okay with it.
All right, any other questions? Okay, let's take it into committee for a decision.
I'll make a motion to approve this application. I think it's appropriate. It's actually a very interesting space. And subject to forestry report.
2.
Item number 2, please.
Okay, so motion to approve, including forestry number 2, moved by Mr. Chang, seconded by Mr. Nipfel. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Just give me a second to switch files here. Item number 38. We have before us, so this address is 270, 276 Gladstone Avenue and 651 Dufferin Street. We have before us a copy of the draft plan of survey, copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans and elevations, a covering letter from the agent, a heritage impact assessment and cultural heritage evaluation report from ERA Architects, planning analysis prepared by SVN Architects and Planners, presentation materials from the agent, a bylaw affecting the subject property. Forestry is asking for condition number 2. Engineering has conditions in their January 13th report, and then our standard consent conditions would apply. I am showing one opposition speaker, is that right? Do you have that individual? No? Okay, do we have the agent on the line?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Laura Dean, and I am a lawyer at Aird & Burles, and we represent the owner of these properties, which is the incumbent and church wardens of St. Anne's Church, Toronto. And I'll just refer to them as St. Anne's.
Okay. Let me see, I'm not sure we need a full presentation. Panel members, do you need a full presentation? No? Do you have questions for the agent? Mr. Clay?
Yeah, I was just surprised to hear you refer to a possible speaker in opposition who isn't here. But to the agent, have you heard of any opposition to this proposal? I think it's just simply a severance.
Sir, that is the first time I've heard that there was any opposition to the application.
Yeah, it surprised me. It's just a severance, right?
It's a severance, and then there are minor variances that accompany that in order to facilitate the severance and the existing conditions, as well as reciprocal easements over that Part 1 and Part 3 in the reference plan. And that's in order to maintain the existing condition of the site in terms of vehicular and pedestrian access until such later date as one of the properties is potentially sold. So it's to be able to maintain the site as it exists today.
Right.
Right, I believe the severances are for potential future sale for 651 Dufferin. And then also there's, it'll allow for refurbishing the church, like any funds that they may get from the future sale, if I read the material correctly.
That's exactly right, yes.
Okay.
And the variances are all existing conditions, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, panel members? Okay, we don't have any other questions, Laura. Is there anything
Sure.
you want to add before we go into committee?
There is one point I'd like to address, please. You mentioned that there are potential engineering conditions that are set out in the ECS memo that's dated January 13th.
Right.
In particular, I would like to address condition number 2, and that would require the conveyance of this strip that's known as Part 2, and that's a strip of land that abuts an existing public laneway to the south of the site. So this condition number 2 would require the conveyance of that strip prior to the issuance of the certificate of official. So I understand ECS is proposing that this would be a condition tied to the approval of the consent. We would request that this condition not be imposed at this time, and that the future lane widening and conveyance of this part could take place at a future redevelopment of the lands. Requiring it at this juncture would impose some undue complications for St. Anne's in terms of the potential sale, and could also impact space that would be available for potentially for construction staging. So there's no functional or operational need for the laneway to be conveyed as part of the severance, delaying the conveyance of the strip until a future redevelopment of the property would be more appropriate. And that's my submission on that piece.
Okay. Sabrina, can you weigh in on this, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, the application is before us today, and engineering construction services have requested for this condition to be fulfilled before we could issue a certificate. The question posed to the agent would be, at what point would the city end up getting the lands, and through what process? So this is the only time that we can achieve this, is through the process of these applications.
Well, there would be an opportunity we would submit at the site plan stage, or even through...
Through you, Madam Chair, we don't do land severances through site plan. It's through a consent application. And this is the process through these applications that are before us today.
And through you, Madam Chair, I would suggest that perhaps there would be a consent agreement of some kind that could be entered into, so that the city could have the confidence.
Through you, Madam Chair, a consent agreement is not before the committee. It is not something that we have power over.
Okay. And
The only
guess
other
I was
option at this
going to
time,
just
through you,
ask
Madam
you,
Chair, is...
Sorry, Sabrina.
Sure.
I was going to ask you, it sounds like we should be imposing the conditions as stated. However, if the conditions imposed, is there still room for discussion with engineering as to when all this happens or not? That it's at least
Yes.
would be on the books is, I guess, what I'm kind of saying.
So through you, Madam Chair, either there is a possibility that the application gets deferred for further conversations with engineering staff, or if committee is to approve the application, impose the conditions, and then the applicant can have further conversations with engineering, and then it's up to engineering staff to sign off on those conditions.
Okay, so to you, Laura, I think as members, these kinds of conditions, you know, we are always asked to put in there, and as per the explanations given by the Deputy Secretary Treasurer. Would you be more comfortable in a deferral to talk to engineering, or we just proceed with the application today and then you enter into further discussions as to whether they would, you know, sort of keep it on file? Like, I really don't know how engineering would handle it.
Madam Chair, I would prefer to proceed then with the application today. I just don't want to defer and then find ourselves in the same position months from now.
Sure. All right. Panel members, do you have any other questions? Okay, let's take it into committee for a decision then. Mr. Clay.
Sure, thanks, Chair. I think this is a relatively straightforward application. It's just looking to sever one parcel of land into two for future considerations. I agree with the discussion about the condition. If we impose it, then the applicant can seek whatever sort of relief it needs from engineering down the road to accommodate whatever circumstance arises. But I think it's a very straightforward application. I would like to move a motion to approve, subject to the engineering conditions as laid out in their memo of January the 13th, 2023.
Okay, and then standard consent conditions. And there's a condition from Heritage in the supplemental report, I believe.
Madam Chairman, there's a heritage condition, and I think it applies to the consent. And then the other issue is that there are variances before us, and I think that the variances are conditional upon forestry number 2.
Yeah, forestry number 2. So there's a heritage, which is regarding revised municipal numbering, if required. That's in the supplemental agenda. And if I could just go back to Laura, are you aware of that Heritage staff report also? Because we got it late last night.
I have reviewed that, yes.
Okay. All right, so it would be the Heritage report dated March 7th, the engineering report dated January 13th, standard consent conditions, and forestry number 2.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I think that I don't know that it matters that much, but I think the heritage and engineering conditions apply only to the consent, but then there's variance application before us as well.
Right.
And I think forestry number 2 applies to the variance decision.
Okay.
Perhaps Serena
All right, so
can correct us if I'm wrong.
Go ahead, Sabrina, maybe just is that correct? So the heritage, the engineering and the consent are for the consent conditions, and then forestry is on the variances. Is that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, Larry, so there you have it. Those are the conditions then. So that's
Great.
So Larry moves approval with those conditions. Do I have a seconder? Carl seconds. So all in favor? So the application is approved with those conditions, and hopefully, Laura, you can work something out with engineering. Okay, the next item is item number 39. 33 Shudell Avenue. We have before us a copy of the minutes from the November 9th public hearing, copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations, covering letter from the agent, previous decision affecting the property, a shadow study from the agent, and we have email correspondence from planning. And they're asking for a condition, and forestry, I believe, are asking for number 1.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I don't have any opposition speakers. Do we have the agent on the line?
Yes, my name is Ryan Love. I'm with ERA Architects. We're located at 625 Church Street, Suite 600. I'm the architect and agent representing the owners.
Okay, you're aware of the planning condition and the forestry condition?
Yes.
All right, panel members, do you have any questions for the agent? All right, sir, there are no questions. I assume you're speaking on behalf of the owner, Fatima Bregman.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything you want to add before we take it into committee for a decision?
No.
Okay, panel members, we're in committee. Anybody? Mr. Nipfel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't have any difficulty, excuse me, with recommending approval of this application. I think it's straightforward. I applaud the architects for the manner in which they're enclosing the porch. It's consistent with the architectural statement of the building, and that's very welcome. I'd like to move approval subject to planning, the planning condition, but we need to change the date. The planning condition is from, as I'm reading it, is from the deferred package of the previous hearing, and the reference to it is drawings of August the 8th, 2022. I'm presuming we need to update the date for the new drawings, and also subject to forestry condition number 1. I'd also like to thank the applicant for the very extensive shadow studies. They were very helpful.
Okay, Sabrina, so will you check the plans date, because it's the same condition in the supplemental agenda, so we'll leave it to you to fix it if need be. Okay, so that motion then is moved, the planning condition and forestry number 1 by Mr. Nipfel, seconded by Mr. Cheng. All in favor? Okay, that carries. All right, our final item today, item number 40. 236 Queensdale Avenue. We have before us a copy of the minutes from the January 25th public hearing and the materials submitted at that time. Copy of the plan of survey, site plan, floor plans, and elevations. 2 form letters signed by the adjacent owner at 238 and the owner at 240 Queensdale. They're in support of the application. And there are no conditions, and the deferral was to post the sign. So, do I have the agent on the line?
This is Eli Yarhi, homeowner at 236 Queensdale Avenue.
Hi, can you speak up a little bit? I don't think we have any, we need a presentation. Anybody have any questions on this one? Not seeing any questions, sir. Do you want to add anything before we take it into committee for a decision?
Not at this time, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, we're in committee. Mr. Cheng, do you want to do the final one, or?
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we've looked at all the drawings and submissions, and I think this is an appropriate development, and I would like to move a motion to approve the application. Don't think there's any.
Oh, there aren't.
Straight here. No. So yes, no conditions.
All right, we have a motion. Did you want to add something, Carl, or you're seconding?
Oh, I'm happy to second it.
All right, motion to approve the application, moved by Mr. Cheng, seconded by Mr. Nipfel. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously, and we stand adjourned at 6:23 p.m. So thank you, everybody, as always, staff and.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, panel members. Have a good evening.
Thanks to the staff.
Day, by the way,
Thank you,
happy
everyone.
Women's Day.
Yes,
Sorry,
happy Women's Day.
I didn't hear you, Aaron. Sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. You and Sabrina and all the staff in the office.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys on the 27th, I guess. We're all down
Right.
here, right?
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
it's in person.
Yeah, everybody. There you go. See you then.
See you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.